Good evening, everybody. It is Friday night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Joined by Jason Mackey and Christopher Carter for Day 2 of our NFL Draft live stream here at Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Coming to you a little bit earlier than we planned. We got set up. We said 8 o'clock, but we're a little bit before 8 o'clock. There's a lot of names flying off the board already, so I'm excited to dig into it. I mentioned Mike's Beer Bar. If you don't have plans for the evening, come on down, get a steak on the stone, get one of their hundreds of beers on tap and available in cans and bottles. They've been great hosts all weekend. Excited to spend another night down here. Guys, there's been a lot of action early in round 2. I want to get back to some day 1 conversation and digest some of the reaction to it in a little bit. But there's been a lot of names flying off the board here that we spent a lot of time talking about in the months leading up to the draft. Jaden Higgins, the receiver out of Iowa State, went second in the second round to the Texans. Nicky Manwari, a guy both Chris Carter and Brian Batko love a lot. The South Carolina safety, he ends up going off the board at 35 to Seattle. The Browns take Quinshon Judkins. 2 picks later, TryVeyon Henderson goes to the Patriots. 2 running backs I think people liked a lot. And then Luther Burden was getting first-round buzz for a while before the DK Metcalf trade. He was the guy we looked at and said maybe he could be the Steelers' first-round pick. He ends up dropping to the second, goes to the Bears moments ago. Gentlemen, any reactions first to some of those names? I think we knew they weren't going to be around at number 83 when the Steelers get on the clock. These are solid players. It's not a surprise that they went, but still, these are guys you could have imagined being very solid Steelers.
Yeah, I would have loved the running backs. I know that. We were talking a little bit before this started, Adam, about the run on running backs and how long does that persist? Does that change any plans for the Steelers? I don't think it does, but Quinshon Judkins in the division, that's certainly a factor. I like that fit for them. Even TryVeyon Henderson for the Patriots. I think the Patriots have had a pretty good draft so far, along with the Browns, honestly. And one name you didn't mention, I know we'll get into this, Shedeur Sanders, still on the board.
Very much still on the board, Jason, and that is a big deal right now. Shedeur Sanders, there's quite a few people out there that think that he should have been taken by somebody in the first round. Clearly, NFL teams disagree because we continue to roll through the second round, and nobody has taken him. I'm looking to see who the Saints pick is right now. They're picking at 40th overall, and looks like he's not on that list either. So we're still waiting to hear what the Saints pick is here. Luther Burden off the board here to the Bears. But yeah,
did the Saints go Sanders?
I mean, I thought
we thought they might go quarterback in the first round.
I thought they would have. This would be a good spot to get him. This is where I value him to be at. So I would not be shocked if he goes here because they could use him at quarterback, at least as a young option. And now you've picked your first-round pick. You got an offensive lineman that you thought was going to be a stud. Let's see who they pick.
Yeah, we never know how long these introductions are going to take.
These intros are so annoying.
Come on, Ryan Ramczyk, let's
go.
Whoa,
Tyler Shough out of Louisville goes before Shedeur Sanders. I did not have that in my bingo board of possibilities tonight.
Wow, I was going to throw out after we got through this, guys, who was going to be the first quarterback off the board in the second round. I thought it might be Jalen Milroe. I did not think Tyler Shough. Well, Adam, you said that was the name you're looking out for.
I was about to say, going into last night, I think we had a pretty good feel, and we ended up being right, a lot of us, that the Steelers were in on Derrick Harmon as they were. I didn't go into tonight with any particular notion of who they might go with, and I told you, Jason, right before we went live, I said, the vibes are just telling me Tyler Shough. I think if he's there, I think he's exactly the type of guy the Steelers might be looking at in the third round to come into a low-pressure situation. Older guy. I think he's going to be 26 when the season starts. He spent 7 years in college, so the development curve should not be quite as hard as it is with some of these other guys. I think Jaylen Milroe's probably the number 1 on that list. So those were my vibes. I was feeling like Tyler Shough might be there and that he might match up with what the Steelers want to accomplish, but he goes at 40th overall early in the second. Did that surprise you, Chris?
Yes, it does. I think Tyler Shough has potential. I think he's a good backup bridge quarterback at his age, what he brings to the table. He's more NFL ready than a lot of guys are. He also has NFL size. But man, to take him ahead of both Milroe and Shedeur Sanders. I think especially because Milroe has the potential of like the high ceiling that he has. I think this screams of the Saints might want to start Shough this year.
Yeah, their quarterback situation is unsettled. Who knows what happens with Derek Carr?
Yeah, who knows? And I think that's the issue here is that you're looking at the you're looking at what you want to be ready for next year. Tyler Shough, I do think, is a pro-ready quarterback. Like, he understands NFL, he understands reads, he understands defenses at a college level. He was able to do things and make checks at the lines that you don't normally expect out of college quarterbacks. So that's what he's bringing to the table immediately for the Saints, and I think that's interesting. I don't know how well that translates that quickly or anything like that, but good for him. He busted his butt through several injuries in his career. He never lost focus. He kept up his athleticism. He runs a really good time in the 40-yard dash. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Saints do with him, but I continue to ask, where is Shedeur Sanders going to end up? Because right now, if he keeps falling, we may be talking about this in about an hour and a half's time when the Steelers pick comes up at 83, if he's still there, and be like, well, everyone was talking about him last night, why not tonight?
I don't think he lasts that long, guys. Do you? I mean, I think it would be a fun storyline. If you're the Steelers, how do you pass on Shedeur at 83 overall? Would have a tough time seeing him tumble that far.
But I had a hard time seeing him tumble to 41, which is where we're at right now.
Very true. Very true.
And sometimes I feel like it's a snowball effect of the logic that, leads teams not to take a guy in the first round, could also lead them not to take a guy in the second round. If you didn't have the desire and the need to go with a guy like him who was graded as one of the better quarterbacks in this draft, then what's going to change 30 picks later? I think that we're looking at New Orleans for a reason, right? And New Orleans settles on Tyler Shough over Shedeur Sanders. So that takes one more team that could even conceivably be looking at quarterbacks early on here out of the mix. So I think this is how things snowball and how you got some of those guys who keep coming back to the Kenny Pickett draft a few years ago. Those guys started going off in the third round. That's why I'd be optimistic if the Steelers do have a general interest in Shedeur Sanders, that maybe he would fall. Guys, before we get too far into it, I mentioned my vibes pick was Tyler Shough. Who's your vibes picks for the night? There's one name, gun to your head, that you're blurting out. Who is the one?
Isaiah Thomas, cornerback out of Florida State. I don't think he'll last that long, but his 40-yard dash might scare people away. If he falls to the third round, he projects as another Joey Porter Jr. type. You could have two press man corners that are big, long, physical, and aggressive, and could very much play the style of cornerback that the Steelers like to play.
I'm feeling cornerback. Thomas would be up there for me. I'm looking at Chris's board. I mean, Trey Amos from Ole Miss.
Woo!
I mean, and here's my logic behind that. I think a quarterback reasonably close to what they could get at number 83 overall is going to be available tomorrow. I don't think now is the time to go get that. I think running back, same thing. It's such a deep class. I'd still look at, Bashal Tutin. I think that's somebody they can get tomorrow. Ole Gordon II, also somebody they can get tomorrow. What is the position that they can't get tomorrow that they can get today? To me, that's corner. I could go a number of different ways. I think Darian Porter's still on the board, right, guys? From Iowa State.
Yeah, I love Darian Porter.
Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame's another one. I mean, there's a lot of corner options, but I feel like by the end of the night tonight, that's going to be fairly dried up. I'd rather see them go corner with their pick. I mean, truth be told, I wouldn't mind them trading into the second round, but this is probably a storyline we should chew on, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't think it's going to happen.
Jerry Dulac did report earlier today. Our Jerry Dulac said that he was not getting the impression that they were particularly interested in trading into the second round. Of course, we had smoke screens last night. We know that Mike Tomlin talked a lot about Shedeur Sanders, threw a lot of people off the scent. Maybe they were trying to do the same thing in projecting that no, they're content with where they are. Maybe that changes. Maybe there's a guy that they like as we get further into the second round here. But for now, those are the vibes. I think we can also have the conversation about George Pickens here. Because if they're going to do it, I mean, it's got to be in the next 10 picks or so, right, Chris? Beyond that, you're not getting the return for George Pickens that I at least think he's worth.
Right.
So it's got to be soon if it's going to be a George Pickens trade.
Yeah, I just don't think it's happening. I think it's off the table. I think the Steelers they've done their. I think they've come to peace with. They think that George Pickens and DK Metcalf can be a duo for the next few years. I think it's a higher likelihood the Steelers sign Pickens to an extension than they would to trade him away.
Sanders has been drafted.
TJ Sanders.
TJ Sanders.
Well done.
See, that was terrible. No, I hate when people do that, Adam. That's terrible because now people are like, oh, Shedeur. Nope, not at all.
Wrong Sanders. Another defensive tackle goes off the board to South Carolina. Yeah, Jason, I think I had this thought earlier today. It feels like, when I saw that Jerry tweet, I tended to believe that that's, the direction they are ultimately going to go, because this is the last medicine in the draft they're going to have to take for a long while, because you're looking toward those compensatory picks that they have next season. And they got picks in every round the rest of the way from here. It's really only the second round that they have to sit out. And then they're going to have a ton of young guys in the next 12 months flooding into this organization, unless they trade up next year, maybe if there's a quarterback they really like. But on paper, you got, 15 or so picks between now and next April?
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way, Adam. If the Steelers were offered a second-round pick in this spot for George Pickens, I think that makes a lot of sense to do it. My guess would be that that's just not the going rate. Based on, again, these are whispers, speculation, that they were going to get like a later third and maybe like a fourth and a fifth. You'd have to repackage those and get into the second round, and even then there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to do it. At that point, I think it's just, it makes much more sense to roll with George Pickens. You can make the argument, again, to get George Pickens in here on his best behavior, outline to him, look, this is what is at the end of the tunnel. If you behave and mature and produce, you can get paid a lot of money. Maybe it's here, maybe it's elsewhere. But I'm not going to cut bait on that for something that I'm not absolutely sure on. Now, if I'm getting a pick in the first 10 picks of the second round and that allowed me to draft Quinshon Judkins or TryVeyon Henderson, I'd make that trade. I don't think that trade was brought to them. As it stands, I don't think it's a bad backup plan to be rolling out George Pickens and DK Metcalf. I do think they can coexist.
Guys, I want to get into the first round reaction a little bit more. We talked about it last night a little bit on the stream, that things seemed pretty divisive in the comment section in our chat, seemed divisive on social media. And then I saw videos of, there was one gentleman that was his birthday last night. He was very sure
I know what video you're talking about.
that Shedeur Sanders was going to be the guy. They were recording him getting ready to react to the Shedeur Sanders pick. And then it ends up being Derrick Harmon. And he was crestfallen. I'm going to ask the question this way. It seems to me like this ultimately comes down in some ways to media consumption habits. If you read and listen to local media, not just the Post-Gazette, there's other people around town, some of our colleagues who've been echoing the same thoughts about the need on the defensive line and been pointing in that direction for months and weeks. And then the final mock drafts in a lot of places went Shedeur Sanders. So if you pay more attention to the national conversation, the national scene, I feel like you had a very different impression of how last night went than if you primarily consumed local media and the local beats.
Well, it's media literacy, Adam, and it's also where people are getting their stuff from. Local writers, people should understand this. A lot of times you're getting your stuff from the organization. You're at places where people in the organization are at. You interact, build sources that way. A lot of national folks, you are trading, they don't use the word stuff, but I'm going to use the word stuff. You're trading stuff with agents nationally, and you're having agents sort of work you over to push storylines.
Yep.
And so that's why you're seeing a lot of fuss about Shedeur Sanders and other picks that aren't really what the Steelers are thinking. It should be a reminder to people out there to follow, and I'm not saying for the Post-Gazette, obviously we want you to follow the Post-Gazette, but follow people who are at the facility every day, who are building relationships, who are around the beat, who are trustworthy, who understand what the organization is thinking, more so than national people that just dive bomb in here. And again, we hear this a lot. I got it on baseball. Why are the national people always breaking something? You know why? Because they can offer intel on 29 other teams that I, as a beat writer, cannot. And so you're sort of trading, again, stuff, that's not the term that's used, with those people. And so you're kind of doing them a favor by pushing something out there, by hoping that they will do you a favor at that point and then slip you something. So, I mean, it's a whole trading game where locals don't necessarily play that. It's more locally, it's how can you get connected within the organization.
Chris, will the way people were gassed up for Shedeur Sanders, if they did consume a lot of that national media, will it calm down? Or is Shedeur Sanders a guy that if the Steelers don't take him at 83, he goes to another team between here and there? Are we going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders for a long time as the guy they didn't take until he proves that maybe he wasn't worth taking?
I think there's always going to be those people. There are still people in Pittsburgh that still think Kenny Pickens should be here. So, like, there's always going to be someone that just believes that quarterback is their guy, and like that they're always going to believe in him. And there's people that they're going to say that. I'm of the impression that Shedeur Sanders, I've said like his NFL traits don't translate that well, and I think that he's going to be a guy that ends up going to a team where it still could be the Steelers technically, where he is a backup option who comes in and gets a shot, and he might have a good game or two and he'll have those flashes. But I don't think he's a franchise guy. I don't think he's going to work out long term for a team, and I think that's what's going to have. Like he may have a resurgence at some point in his career when he gets more experience and he comes to like the next Geno Smith or whatever. I don't see it with him. And so, like, there will always be people that second-guess everything and say, oh, I knew that he was the guy, and he is the guy despite what everyone else thinks. He just needed the right opportunity. But to me, nah, I don't think it'll be that big of a regret. There will be some people who push that until they see, until he either does bad or does poorly or does well, and then we see that. But, yeah, like, I don't think it's anything like. I'm less concerned about that, more like, hey, let's just see how far he falls.
What do you say to the people? I've seen this comparison a lot. That they saw Shedeur Sanders as Jameis Winston without the interceptions, without the irresponsibility. Is that bunk in your mind, or is that maybe a legit comparison?
No, that's bunk, because Jameis Winston has a cannon of an arm. Like, that man can whip it far and whip it really hard, and he can hit a tight seam. It's just that oftentimes he does that and he'll do it into triple coverage because he thinks that, you know what, my arm can beat that. That's not what Shedeur Sanders has. Honestly, I compare Shedeur Sanders a little bit more to Russell Wilson. Like, he is a guy that's going to want to roll around a little bit because he's smaller. He's going to throw up some deep floaters, and he's going to give you some deep ball chances. But I think he lacks Russell Wilson's experience, where Russell Wilson could make all the calls at the line of scrimmage, switch things up, and then dissect your defense really quickly. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders can do that, and that's another reason why I'm just hung up about him.
Well, and he certainly wouldn't be able to do that for the Steelers if we're making the Russell Wilson comparison.
What do you mean, Adam?
If you believe the reporting, they didn't let Russell Wilson do that.
No, I'm kidding.
So just giving context to the viewers. I did see a video floating around social media today. It's very funny how I see stuff after the draft that would have been very helpful for my impression of things before the draft. And they had a visual representation of Cam Ward and how much more zip he had on the ball. I think they both did a drill at SMU, and they were both throwing, and you could see the zip on Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders.
Alfred Collins off the board.
Oh, wow. That's a big, let's get to that in a second. But does it seem obvious to you at this point, Jason, why Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders ended up going on these very different paths?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we thought they were going on different paths to begin with, Adam. At least I didn't. I didn't have them like 1A, 1B. Did I think Shedeur Sanders was going to fall this far? Of course not. Nobody did. I'm frankly baffled why Shedeur has fallen as far as he has. I mean, fallen past the Steelers, fallen past the Giants trading up for him, tumbling out of the first round. I kind of get it. I thought he would be picked by now. I mean, it is interesting that Shedeur Sanders, not elite arm talent, not elite mobility, not elite decision making, maybe not an elite program, at least in the term of a Big Ten SEC school. Not that Colorado is like, playing in the President's Athletic Conference or something like that.
But they were not even a good Big 12 team.
Right. I mean,
Right.
well, they won 9 games, 10 games, something?
I don't think they got that close.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they were
like 7 or 8.
4 and 8.
No. Hang on.
That was last year's record.
Yeah, we got to check that. I didn't think it was that bad. You got me there, Adam, on the standings. This is going to bother me until I get it. I didn't think they were that atrocious.
They were 9-4. Excuse me. They were 4-8 last year. They were 4-8 last year. Is my
Come
bad.
on, Chris. No, but I mean, he doesn't really do anything elite. But we were talking about him
Exactly.
at one point as the number 2 quarterback taken. Why? Was that national shine? Was that because of his dad? Was that because of almost like a narrative
It's
that
because-
seemingly like he pushed? I don't know.
It's because when people are hungry, they will go to a buffet and eat anything. When people are thirsty, they will drink whatever you give them. And if you are thirsty for a quarterback, you're going to drink whatever you get. And that's what a lot of people fall for. And I think that's the mistake that people fall into, because then you drink something that ain't good for you or eat something that's not healthy for you. And that's what Shedeur Sanders would have been if he was taken in the first round by the Steelers. Because to me, clearly, he's not a first-round quarterback. We are about midway through the second round, and no one has taken him. And that's not saying he stinks. It's just that, hey, I don't think I'd said for all along he's not a first-round quarterback. This is proving that's the case. So, like if the Steelers had taken him yesterday and knowing that this is the actual reality that we live in, it would have been like Terrell Edmonds, where they took him way too early, and everyone was like, he would have been around in the third round. So, my whole thing here is Shedeur Sanders. Let's see how far he continues to fall. If he falls to the third round, we'll get to that conversation with him. You know what? That would be a great value for him. But here's the thing: the further he falls, when does Jalen Milroe get picked? Because I love Jalen Milroe in the third round. I think that's an optimal backup quarterback situation.
Okay, I've got an intriguing. Well, maybe it's not intriguing, but so the Rams are up in a couple picks.
Yeah.
If you're the Rams, if you're Sean McVay, do you take Jalen Milroe as kind of a chess piece? You don't need him to play quarterback right now. You can let him sit behind Matthew Stafford. But somebody with an offensive mind can use him in a productive way.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the Rams don't dip into that well a little bit.
I thought the Rams would go quarterback in the first round. I would not be shocked if they go quarterback in the second.
I mean, he's like a half quarterback, but he's a full athlete. And if you're going to, put together a unique package complementing Matthew Stafford, I do think you can take advantage of Jalen Milroe. I mean, the Colts are picking right before them, too. They're on the clock right now. The Cowboys pick is in. We don't know what it is. But, I mean, the Colts, they're not necessarily sold on Anthony Richardson. Jalen Milroe would obviously require some work. I'm just curious, if you're one of those teams and you think you can take advantage of what Jalen Milroe does well, makes sense.
I'll wrap up the Shedeur conversation for at least a little bit by saying this. I think those early mock drafts are also very shaped by national games. I mean, a lot of times we like to think all these games are available on every channel. It's very easy to access them compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago. So in theory, everyone can watch every player that they want to, but that's still not really true. The big national games do have a big impression on national perception. Shedeur Sanders played a bunch of those because of his dad. He played in a bunch of those because of Travis Hunter, who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, ended up going very high in the draft. So that's the source of some of that shine, I think. And Tyler Shough did not play those games. And I think a lot of people didn't know him quite as well. I'd probably put myself on that list, even though I watched a decent amount of them. So just something to keep in mind there as well.
Don't you think some of the other spots on the NFL offseason tour kind of play up the tools guys? And what I mean by, like, you go to the Senior Bowl, you go to the Combine, guys that can run fast, throw the ball far, they look good. Not necessarily play football well, but they look good. They end up seeing their stock rise, and I'm not so sure that Shedeur is one of those guys.
Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College off the board to the Cowboys. Edge rusher.
I want to bounce back to Big Al Collins. He goes off the board. He was on your top 5 list of names to watch, Chris, as a potential pick for the Steelers at 83. He goes what? That was 43, so 40 picks earlier. What did you like about him, and what is your disappointment level if you're a Steelers fan and not getting him, or at least not having the option to get him?
You know, I thought it was interesting. I had him ranked 78th on my big board. I had him more of as a third-round pick. I still think he would. I did not expect him to be there in the third round. It's just a little earlier than I thought. So, not all that disappointing. I think Alfred Collins was a guy where maybe if they had traded back in the first round and not gotten a top-tier defensive tackle, and that pick had gone to corner or receiver or someone else, and then they were saying, okay, we got a second-round pick. Now we get Alfred Collins in the second round. That I could see that. That would make sense. But I think this is fine. Like he wasn't going to be available at 83. I didn't have him being there. So not too hurt up, especially because you got your guy at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We just had that conversation a couple of times about the potential to double dip and that type of stuff. Let me consult my list of the best availables here. Will Johnson was a guy we talked a lot about last night at a couple points. We talked a lot about him at various points in the process. Did you ascertain any additional information there, Chris, about what's going on with him? Because he's a tantalizing prospect, but he's still available.
Yeah, just injuries from what I understand. I think that's it. That's literally it. And it's interesting how far does that make you tumble? Like, is there a fear that he's lost all his speed? Because he was an explosive playmaker. Certainly a concern here if you're looking forward to that. I do wonder what that's going to be.
Jason, I wanted to ask you this. You both brought up the need at cornerback, potentially going that direction in the third round. Another name that's still out there, a small college guy, Siobhan Ravel Jr. from East Carolina.
I like him.
Does he interest you in terms of possibly addressing that need? He's number 4 on Kuiper's best available at the moment. So
absolutely, but is he waiting till 83?
Yeah.
I don't see why he would. I probably wouldn't trade up to get him just because of the other things available. Again, we've talked about this before. How possible is trading up? I mean, yes, he interests me, but he's like I don't know, Darius Alexander, or who else am I looking at? Tyleik Williams. I don't know. I'm picking guys that I like, but are not going to be there for the Steelers. I kind of put him in that bucket.
Yeah. I think that's we got the Colts announcing their pick. JT Tuimoloau terrorized Penn State at Beaver Stadium multiple times in the last couple of years. The Ohio State guys are flying off the board.
And the edge rushers are flying off the board.
That's actually a good jumping off point. Because Jerry Dulac did in that tweet saying that he didn't expect them to trade into the second round. He said, look at running back. He also said, look at edge. And that's not a position that I've really been looking at all during this draft process. Guys, you have Nick Herbig there. You have T.J. Watt. You have Alex Highsmith. But we know the situation with T.J. Watt is still somewhat up in the air. There's been a question of whether they're going to get that extension done, whether the $40 million plus that T.J. Watt may want is going to be worth it for the Steelers into T.J. Watt's 30s. Have we overlooked edge as a potential need and a position they might want to address tonight?
Nope.
To build depth.
Nope. I listed it as a position they specifically would not draft. I was just like, they're too loaded at that position with too many needs at other positions. Leave that alone. But hey, you know what? Maybe they feel like they could use one more guy to bring to camp. I still don't think it'd be a third-round pick. Maybe a D3 of the draft type of pick. But I just think in the third round, you're going to have a shot at a running back, a quarterback, a cornerback, at any three of those positions. And I think there will be some good prospects there at those, and those are much bigger needs. But hey, and I think the other thing here is that edge rushers are flying off the board. So it'd be one thing if no edge rushers are getting picked, and all of a sudden you got a guy that I projected as a second-round pick in the third. Then I would be like, all right, you know what, that's a different story. You're getting high value there. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think edge rushers are going to continue to fly off the board, and you're going to see them not take one in the third round.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we can talk about the possibility of them not bringing back T.J. Watt all we want. It's useless. I don't agree with it. It still is useless. They're going to bring back T.J. Watt.
Yeah.
We've got no indication otherwise. So you're going to have Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig. I just don't see any point in using a third-round pick when all of these other needs we're talking about. I mean, let people take edge rushers all they want. And I agree with Chris. I mean, if you get to the 6th, 7th round or something, whatever. Take one. I don't care. It wouldn't be before that for me.
You guys mentioned the need at running back. I don't think we've really dug too far into that, even though I think with Tyler Shough off the board, I think increasingly maybe you're not looking at quarterback this round or the third round, whenever it comes up, because we still got a long way to go to 83. But there's a lot of names that are still available at the running back position that intrigue people. Kaleb Johnson of Iowa is a very solid player. Just going down Mel Kiper's best available, you have Cam Scatterbu, Dylan Sampson, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Jordan James, RJ Harvey, Damian Martinez, Byshell Tootin, Trevor Etienne, Rashard Smith, Woody Marks, Jaden Blue. I mean, there's a ton of names on this list, guys. Who, if you're the Steelers, do you most hope is there of those guys that fits with what they might want to do? Who's high on your wish list? That, especially as I think you get into the 4th, 5th, 6th guys on that list, I think a lot of them are going to be there.
You're talking about the running backs?
Yes.
I really like Dylan Sampson. I think his explosiveness and speed would be interesting. He's smaller. That's the only hang up there. I liked Kaleb Johnson at first, but his lack of speed at the combine a little worries me. I think that he needs to be a little bit quicker and faster to get to the point of attack. I really like DJ Giddens. That's been the guy that I thought makes a lot of sense for the Steelers. Great zone runner, great job reading holes at the line of scrimmage, quick to get to his top speed. I liked him a lot there. And then RJ Harvey, a more physical version of a similar style of back as DJ Giddens. So I like those two guys right there as options. But I gotta say, one guy that I really like that the Steelers only talked to at the Senior Bowl. They never saw him at the Combine. They never talked to him at the pre-draft visit. They didn't go to his pro day. Damian Martinez out of Miami. That guy is a power back with speed. Like, when he takes off, when he can hit the home runs, but he will also bowl you over. I have loved Damian Martinez's tape. I did not understand why the Steelers didn't pursue him harder in the draft process. But hey, maybe that's another smokescreen. Yeah, that's the part of the draft season. You just don't know.
I have a couple different names from those guys. I don't love Kaleb Johnson. He stinks of Naji Harris to me. I would try to stay away from that.
Yeah, same vibe, like just not explosive enough, and that's what they want now.
And I don't think Dylan Sampson's going to be around at number 83. That could just be my own vibe, my own impression.
I agree with you.
They have not put much stock in Devin Neal from Kansas. I have nothing against Devin Neal. I just don't see as that being a possibility.
He ran a bad 40.
Yeah.
Like when he ran a slow 40, I dropped him way down on my list.
They need somebody with home run hitting capability. They need somebody with breakaway speed. For me, that's probably Tootin from Virginia Tech. I mean, 4.3 40, the combine, something like that. I saw an Isaiah Pacheco comp put on him. I understand you might want a bigger back, somebody who's more physical, but I'm good with Tootin. Let him go on third down. Let him go in a specialized role and take advantage of a home run hitting capability. The other guy that I feel like I've kind of brought up ad nauseum, but I feel strongly about, is Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State. I don't think it would take anything higher than a 5th-round pick to get him 2 years ago. Had an extremely productive season. I don't think he's fallen off that far. Team success was not that great in 2024. Ran for nearly 3,000 yards in college, scored a bunch of touchdowns. I like Ollie Gordon II. I think he could fit really well in this offense.
I feel like running back has become something of a choose-your-own-adventure novel in some of these draft conversations, because with Omarion Hampton, the thing you were saying is that guy's a battering ram. He looks like a Pittsburgh Steeler. The physical back, maybe
Speaking
has some
of Naji,
Harris.
by the way. How about that? Hampton and Naji.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a heck of a 1-2 punch.
So, but I think it's interesting because I think people look at the situation, you can talk yourself into whatever you imagine the Steelers needing, and they don't have necessarily that Naji Harris type. And I think you can talk yourself into saying, well, maybe they need that to balance out Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren. And then you can go the complete opposite side of the spectrum with like Byshell Tootin, for example, and say, man, having that speed, not just in the backfield, but potentially in the return game. I think that's a facet we haven't talked about in hours on this NFL Draft live stream, but the kickoffs, the dynamic kickoffs, touchbacks are moving now to the 35-yard line, so there's going to be an extreme premium on return yardage. The Steelers struggled in that capacity, so I can talk myself into the short, fast, quick guy. I can talk myself into the battering ram. Chris, what do you think the Steelers are trying to accomplish in actuality?
Just looking at who they talk to, I think they're looking for the explosive guy. Not even necessarily the fast guy, just a guy that can quickly burst, get from 0 to 60, even if it's not 0 to 100. If it's 0 to 60 and they can quickly get to a top speed that gets away from defenders, that'll be enough. I think that they, like, Basil Tutin's an interesting pick later on. Like, I hear you there. Ollie Gordon, I just feel like, man, they just keep stacking up Oklahoma State running backs with Jaylen Warren. But to me, it's going to be about who can make the zone read, can read where the gap is, burst into that gap, and then quickly get to a top speed that runs away from a linebacker who might be a little timid to attack at that point. That's what the Steelers want. They want a guy that's going to do that. Naji Harris wasn't that much. He was the guy that he would hit the hole, and then he would just hit you, and then you would fall backwards, and he'd get 4 or 5 yards if the offensive line blocked well. They want this offensive line to block well, but instead of it being a 4 or 5 yard wear you down type of thing, they want it to be a thing where it's like it might be 4 or 5 yards, or it might be 10 to 15 yards because he made one guy miss, and then all of a sudden he's too quick to bring down.
A little Willie Parker maybe in this situation.
A little bit.
Jason, your thoughts on the running back situation and what you think they're trying to accomplish, less so what you're looking
Will
at.
Johnson goes off the board to the Cardinals.
Oh, finally. Oh, wow. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Chris is saying. You need a running back to separate himself in some way. I don't think they're looking to spend premium draft capital on somebody who's going to underperform. I don't think they're looking for somebody to run straight ahead for 3.5 yards and, really get stopped at the line of scrimmage as frequently as Naji Harris did. I think you can go a number of different directions. I think you can get somebody who is a home run hitter like a Basil Tutin. You can get somebody who's a little bit more of a specialist. They've given themselves depth with Kenneth Gainwell. And I do think Jaylen Warren, I mean, if you're going to pay him that tender, which they are, $5.5 million or whatever it is, you're going to take advantage of him. So that's another thing they're telling us, that whatever running back they take, it's probably not going to be somebody that they're counting on to carry it 250 times. Jaylen Warren, I think, is going to get the lion's share. But if you have a guy who can help out in specialized situations, that's who I'm taking. And I think you can do that a number of different ways. Trevor Etienne is somebody that Chris brought up. Devin Neal from Kansas. Again, I wouldn't be scared off on a 40 time. I think he's a pretty solid, productive running back that maybe you could find a specialized role for, like I'm talking about. I don't think they're going to be in the market based on how their running back situation is constituted right now and guys already on their roster. I don't think they're going to be in the market for a 3rd down or a 3-down back.
Man, I love that Arizona Cardinals draft so far. Walter Nolan in the first, Will Johnson in the second. Those were guys we were talking about as 2 first-rounders at different points.
Not just 2 first-rounders, 2 top 15 picks, in my opinion. I didn't care about the Will Johnson injury because I didn't see how bad it was. I don't look at those medicals. I don't have access to that. Just on tape and what he brings to the table, I thought Will Johnson was the 11th best player in this draft. I slated Walter Nolan as the 14th best player. If those guys are healthy and deliver well, the Cardinals could have just really scooped up some serious talent in the first 2 picks this year.
We've got a divisional foe coming up in a couple of picks here. The Bengals got Shamar Stewart last night, a name we talked about for the Steelers at different points in the process, but never quite showed the finishing ability that I think a lot of people were looking for. What do the Bengals need to accomplish here on day 2, already having Shamar in the fold? We talked a lot about their defense and how it's bad and how it got worse as they put all their money in their receivers and their weapons for Joe Burrow. Do they keep going to that defensive well tonight, guys, or do you think they might be looking for a little more protection for Joe Burrow?
We talked about them needing defensive tackle. Darius Alexander's sitting right there, and that would be great value for them right now. Defensive tackle out of Toledo, fantastic athlete, had a relative athletic score of 9.17. He was the guy the Steelers talked to. They didn't invite him. He did get an invite, But he's someone that would be very interesting for them to take right now. But I still have to think they need to protect Joe Burrow. They got to invest in this offensive line soon.
Jason, are you leaning more offensive line or defense for the Bengals?
I'm going defense. I like Darius Alexander a lot. I think that makes sense for them. The Bengals are stacked offensively. I'm not worried about what they can do, how many points they can score. They need to prevent points. I was not impressed by them last season, and they're worse.
I'm worried about protecting Joe Burrow. Joe
Burrow's fine.
This guy's missed 2 out of his 5 seasons in the NFL.
Tell him to toughen up. I'm just kidding.
You know what, Jason? I'm gonna put you behind that offensive line and see how long you last, sir.
I would not last more than 5 minutes, Chris. But that's why I'm sitting here and not there.
I hear that. But that's my only thinking is that they have done a poor job of protecting their superstar quarterback. They have made the playoffs twice in the 5 years that he's been in the league. Like,
I know, Chris, but their defense is terrible.
It is terrible, and you invested in that yesterday. So go get you an offensive lineman that's going to actually help protect your quarterback. Otherwise, he's going to be understood. Like, that's another thing that held them back was even when in games where their offense made some plays, it got held back. Why? Because they couldn't protect their guy, and he was like running for his life half the time. But hey, you know what? If they go D tackle again, Darius Alexander would be a great fit right now for them, and that's a guy I slated as a first-round pick. Awesome value there. But the question I'll have is, what do you do with that O-line if Joe Burrow's under siege this year, takes another low hit, and then all of a sudden he's out for the season for a third time in his 6-year career?
Who's your best offensive lineman available right now? I'm looking at your top 100.
Yeah, let me look at that actually.
Bray Zabel?
He's gone.
He's gone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was gone. Let me see. Josh Connerly out of
Oregon.
Yeah.
Yep.
8.85 relative athletic score. I had him as a first-round pick to the Chiefs, I want to say. So him being available.
I thought he went last night.
Oh, he did? I missed that one.
From Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah, he.
Commanders.
Yeah, he went to the
Never
Commanders
mind.
last night.
So he's off the board. Oh, let me see. I have to take my big board there. But I put him there. Tyler Booker's gone.
Donovan Jackson?
Maybe Donovan Jackson. Ariante
He's gone
Ursery.
too. He's gone too.
Ariante Ursery. That might be my best offensive lineman left right now.
Yep.
Gentlemen, I think we buried the lead a little bit on the Browns. We got a birthday going on here at Mike's Beer Bar, so I'll try to speak up a little bit. The Browns picked the first pick of the second round, and then they also picked the fourth pick of the second round. They go with Carson Schwessinger of UCLA with that first pick. They got Quinshon Judkins. In addition to what they accomplished yesterday with Mason Graham, how do you like the draft they're having so far, Chris?
I thought their move back to get Mason Graham was smart because they picked up an extra first-round pick and an extra second-round pick. I think Quinshon Judkins is a good pick. I think he's a good running back. I don't know how I feel about Carson Schwessinger. I still have other questions about this team. I think they're another team that could use a replenishment of their offensive line. This has been very meat and potatoes. You get a running back, you get a linebacker, you get a D tackle. All guys that work in the box. I'd be intrigued. I also wonder, what do they think is happening at quarterback? Because right now, that looks like a very shaky situation that they've got going on right there. And I thought for sure with 2 picks, there's Ariante Ursery, so he's the first tackle. He's another tackle off the board to the Texans. If I'm the Browns, I thought they would go quarterback early, but I think this just continues to show you this was not the quarterback class to go reaching for guys.
Right.
And even if the Browns won't do it when they've got hurt up Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, did they sign Joe Flacco back?
He was at the Guardians game yesterday, so I think so.
So that's the thing is that their quarterback situation is just as dire as the Steelers, and you're not seeing them panicking. And they have more and higher picks. So my opinion, it just further validates the less of a rush, the lack of a rush to go get that quarterback in this draft class.
A little bit of news here. Jerry Dulac tweets out, when asked tonight what position the Steelers might address in the third round, team owner Art Rooney II indicated on Fox Sports Pittsburgh, running back, maybe quarterback. Yeah. Who knows if that's a smokescreen? Who knows if Art's trying to leverage something?
That's very much the chalk right now, right? Running back and quarterback are what we talked about yesterday. That's where the value is right now. I think running back is the prime value of this. And it's going to be interesting because quarterback I think it's going to be if it's the right quarterback that's sitting there, right? Because if it's Jalen Milroe or Shedeur Sanders, I think it's taken. If it's Will Howard, I think they wait until round 4 and they look at one of those running backs. But again, just a lot of things we got to wait and see about.
Let me ask the question this way about the running backs. When you go one to what is the spread in talent here? Because I look at these guys well down the list. I think Kyle Monangai, I watched him play a lot of good football at Rutgers. He's number 16 on Kuiper's best available. obviously you've had multiple running backs taken at this point, so more or less he's like the 20th best running back in this class, and he was very good for the Scarlet Knights. What is the spread in terms of talent from a Kaleb Johnson as being maybe the best guy who's left on the board to, I think you get down to Ollie Gordon at number 18 here.
Demetrius Knight Jr., linebacker out of South Carolina, goes to the Bengals. There's your defensive pick there, Jason.
Yep. Joe Burrow's going to continue on his back, injured. Oh, boy.
They said they gave you the receivers. Now figure it out with them and run for your life. But, yeah, what's that spread in talent, Chris, between those guys at the top of the running back list and maybe, 15, 16, 17 on that list?
I think it's actually not that steep. I think there's like Kaleb Johnson's better there, but not by a whole lot. This is why I think the Steelers were perfectly fine with waiting on running back until this part of the draft, because a lot of these guys, you might prefer one over the other, but it's not like Kenneth Grant and Derrick Harmon versus Alfred Collins and these other guys, right? I think it's not like a completely different, it's just different styles at this point. And that's where I think the difference is at running back right now. I don't think it's that far of a drop-off, which is why I think they could be totally fine waiting till 83 and just taking whoever's there, whether that's a quarterback or a running back.
Well, Jason, here's my thought then. If the talent spread's not that big, then why do you have to do it in the third round?
Right. I agree.
And is there a path to taking one of these guys that you still feel really good about in the fourth round, maybe the fifth round if you're patient and you're liking the way the board is falling? That would kind of add more smoke to the quarterback fire, I think, in some ways.
Well, if we're going to work off of what Art said, quarterback, running back, I like the idea of taking a quarterback in the third round because I don't think you're going to get as much value. Like, if we're just narrowing it in on those two positions, I don't think it's worth making that pick today. I still think what you can get tomorrow from a running back is very good. Now, if I look at the quarterback situation, Shedeur Sanders probably ain't going to be there. Jaylen Milroe probably isn't going to be there. You're looking at
they shouldn't be.
I'm going to operate under that assumption. So you're looking at Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Tyler Shuck's gone, Kyle McCord, and then what? I'm not taking Riley Leonard in the third. I don't like that. I'm not taking Curtis Rourke in the third. I don't like that. So at that point, I'm probably going to feel like I want the best of that next cut. I think it's probably Will Howard, just because I don't want to lose that guy and then not come out of here with a quarterback I at least feel okay about if I have to play in 2025.
Yeah. You brought up a name that interests me at quarterback just because I feel like we watched him have that disastrous game at Acrisure Stadium against Pitt.
Oh, McCord.
McCord threw those 5 interceptions. How many pick sixes was it, Chris? 2 or 3?
3 pick sixes in the first half.
It was one of the worst quarterback performances I've ever watched with my own eyes, Jason. Is that infecting our view of him locally? If we were covering the Ravens or we're covering the Bengals,
view, I'll be honest. I think Kyle McCord stinks because I was at that game and I can't shake that thought.
I think
he put up huge numbers.
I know he did. And no quarterback can possibly be that bad. But I can't shake that thought.
I think he is still a day 3 quarterback. I think if you get him in the 5th round, you won. I don't think he's someone to break things over. I do think he'd be a good backup quarterback. I think he could do a lot of things well, but he does have a bit to put together. So I'm not rushing to the podium for Kyle McCord right now.
4,779 yards, 34 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. If you take that night at Acrisure Stadium away, it's only 7. He had a great year. I think he'd be a great day 3 guy myself. I tend to agree with you guys. It's just very interesting that I don't know that he's that much different, or at least I didn't go into this draft thinking that there was that much of a talent spread between him and a Tyler Shough or him and a Will Howard.
I'm really surprised Shough went where he is. I'm still stunned by that, where he did.
But we've talked a lot more about Shough or Will Howard or Jalen Milroe or pretty much every quarterback whose name is not Kyle McCord in this draft process. So I found that interesting because we had that data point that I don't know a lot of people around the country are necessarily looking at, because I think Lance Zierlein actually had a slightly better grade on Kyle McCord versus Will Howard, who I think I saw multiple mocks because I did our day 2 mock draft tracker on Post-Gazette.com. If you haven't already, check that out. But Will Howard was on several of those mocks this morning as well. So is it worth talking through the Will Howard conversation? And is he a day 2 quarterback, or is he more of the Kyle McCord?
I think he's still a 4th round pick in my opinion. Like you could reach up in the 3rd and get him if you really believe in him, but I'd be okay. Like he's a backup quarterback. That's exactly what you're looking at here. Get him in the 4th. Use that 3rd round pick to be a guy that can help you this year at running back or cornerback or another position.
Chris, if you have to take quarterback or running back at number 83, where do you go?
Running back.
Yeah, do you think it's more immediate?
Sweet spot for that pick right there. Unless Milroe or Sanders are still there, then I change my mind. But everyone else after them are day 3 picks in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, truth be told, my answer would probably be door number 3. I'd probably go with the corner.
I love corners right now. I mean, again, you look at the corners available to you. Darian Porter's still on the board. Another tight end just flew off to the Seahawks. Darian Porter's still on the board. Azariah Thomas still on the board. Trey Amos still on the board. A lot of good cornerbacks here that you could add to this secondary. And, like, again, when you draft a cornerback, you're not needing them to be a superstar right away because you got Darius Slay and Joey Porter Jr. so that you can work this guy in. I think it just adds up there that corner would be a legitimate thing. But you know what? I'm going to say this. If Darius Alexander falls to the Steelers somehow at 83, I'm double dipping and just doing 2 defensive tackles because I think him and Derrick Harmon are 1st round guys, and you would have just solved a lot of D tackle problems right there.
Just a random observation, guys. Sorry this comment doesn't attach to that one, Chris. I think there have been more tight ends taken than quarterbacks so far.
Yes, I'd agree.
Right? I mean, Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, Tyler Shough. Right?
Yeah.
We had at least 2 tight ends yesterday and 3 today.
Yeah, Mason Taylor was on that list today. Chris, you mentioned Darian Porter, a name that we haven't talked about a ton other than, I think we've said a couple times, I like him, and then we just kind of moved on. Give me more about Darian Porter, because I think when we start to match value with need, and I think that's what's leading us to cornerback here as this is unfolding a little bit. He seems to be right there with Azariah Thomas in terms of kind of matching up in that way. I like him a lot too. He's pretty big, but he can move. So yeah, give me more of your thoughts about him.
Darian Porter has high-end speed. That's the one thing that he has that Thomas doesn't. He can play press. I think Thomas is a better press man cornerback with his ability to just keep you at the line of scrimmage and bully you. But Darian Porter's a guy that can do that, use his length, use his size, but then also run with the top speed guys. That's why I ranked Porter ahead of Thomas on my big board. And if both of them were there in the 3rd round, that'd be a really tough thing to pass up on because I think either one of those guys could be long-term starters in the NFL.
Quincy Riley, Noel Williams, Jacob Parrish, some other solid players are there on the board at corner. Noel Williams had, I think, 7 interceptions this past season at Cal. I did see him in some late multi-round mocks connected to the Steelers. Jacob Parrish was a name I believe you talked a lot about early on, Chris.
Yep.
Jason, as I'm sitting here and I'm reading down the list of availables, I don't think I went into the night thinking corner, but the more I'm reading what's there and matching it up with the way the board's falling, I'm warming up more and more to it.
All right, let's go. Get aboard the train, man. Let's go.
Choo-choo.
I mean, I just look at it. Darius Slay, I like the signing. It's a short-term solution. They still need somebody behind him.
I agree.
And right now, if we're using the argument, who can you get now that you can't get later? I'm presenting an argument that you can get a running back tomorrow. Chris might disagree a little bit. I think he feels the other way about a quarterback. You're going to wait on a quarterback. We could probably both agree that the quality of corner right now is not available tomorrow that will be available tonight.
Agreed. And the more they fall in the 2nd round, the more it looks better for the 3rd.
Yeah.
That was Nick Skirton just going off the board. Am I right? I think I saw the
Nick
first
Skirton, yeah.
Okay. I think we're going to take a quick break here. We're at the 55-minute mark. See if we can connect with Brian Batko, Ray Fittipaldo on the south side, maybe get their takes in here. So we're going to take a quick break here. We're at Mike's Beer Bar tonight. If you don't already have plans for the evening, come on down, say hi to us. steak on a stone, lots of beer available. The atmosphere is great in here. We got the doors closed tonight, so I can smell the food. It's getting trapped. The din of the steakhouse is getting trapped, and I already had a steak, Jason. But now
you gonna get another one?
I think I want another one. I don't know if I'm going to have time in the next 4 hours or however long we're on here, but certainly making me want another one. So come on down, and if you're choosing to stay in for the night, you're enjoying us at home. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have content 7 days a week talking about the Steelers. Chris Carter's the host of the North Shore Drive podcast. Jason Mackey has a couple of podcasts on the channel, so if you like what you're hearing, subscribe. A lot more to come your way after the draft. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar, next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
right, we are back. We're adding Ray Fittipaldo to the studio. Ray, can you hear me?
Good evening, guys. How we doing?
Hey, Ray.
What's up, Ray?
Ray is joining us from the Steelers South Side facility, coming out of the press room to talk to us. Ray, give me your thoughts about how this board is falling for the Steelers. A lot of solid corners left. Tyler Shough, I think, surprised us a little bit going, 40 overall to the New Orleans Saints. He was a quarterback some people had their eyes on in this round. He's now gone. Your colleague Jerry Dulac reported running back, maybe quarterback were the words out of Art Rooney's mouth earlier tonight. Just give me your thoughts as you're kind of seeing things unfold a little bit here in round 2.
Yeah, we were just talking upstairs. If Shedeur Sanders doesn't get picked in the second round, then I could see him being there at number 83, and I never thought that would happen. If you look at the board, who's still set to pick, maybe the Raiders at the end of the third round. There might be 1-2 other teams. But if it gets to round 3, there's a very real possibility that Shedeur Sanders could be there for the Steelers.
What do you think of that, Ray? Do you think that's the fit if he's there? Because I think some people have said, we've spent a decent chunk tonight talking about his flaws. Do you like the upside there enough to do that?
Yeah, listen, the scuttlebutt today was he's not athletic enough. If you're going to be a top pick in the NFL draft now, you got to have that in your toolbox. So he maybe has that going against him, but he was a very successful quarterback in college, and he's a guy who's still in a lot of draft boards at the top end. Guys, I'm getting some feedback. Hold on one second.
Yeah, Ray, we might have to drop you out real quick and bring you right back. We'll have you work with Christelle for a second.
Okay.
All right, Ray will be right back, guys. Jason, do you want to pull at that thread a little bit more of him bringing up Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, the idea of Shedeur Sanders and that being the scuttlebutt that he could potentially be there at number 83 is wild to me, and it's wild for a couple of reasons. One, I don't hate the pick at all with Shedeur in the third round. And two, I go back to last night and the outrage over the Steelers not taking Shedeur Sanders at number 21. We see even further evidence how ill-fated some of that was. And I think credit to the Steelers for not falling for some of that smoke. But, I disagree with the idea that Shedeur is going to be there at 83. I just find that extremely hard to believe. But if it's there, that's a very easy pick to make for me.
Let's just talk through, who's now between the Steelers and the 83rd pick. You're at 55, so you're inside of 30. Some of these teams we talked about, probably not the Chargers, probably not the Bears, probably not the Broncos.
A lot of the rest of this round, Adam.
Right, so the Ravens, the Lions, the Commanders, Bears again, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. I feel like, he's probably going to be in the third round, Chris. The question is, how much further does he go down? Because even at the top of the third, you have the Giants, the Chiefs, maybe the Browns. Right. And so maybe the Browns. We've been having that conversation a chunk of the evening.
Raiders.
They're going to get past the Colts again. The Colts could very easily take. I could see the Jets going there in the third round.
Yeah, so I think it gets
a Saints pick. Yeah.
Well, the Saints got Shough though, so it's
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there are only so many. It seems like 30 picks is a long way to go, but there feel like there are only so many destinations possible, Chris.
There are a lot of there are not that many possibilities right now. So that's why it's not out of the realm of possibilities right now. I'm still looking at this as a potential thing. So. I'm not really I don't think it's crazy. It felt crazy at the start of the night because I thought that the Browns would take him, or I thought that someone else would take him. But now we are what, at 55? The 55th pick is Trey Harris to the wide receiver from Ole Miss to the Chargers. So we're about to go to 56 with the Bears. We are less than 10 picks away from the end of the second round, and Shedeur Sanders is still there. That might tell me that he's still available. But again, who knows? Maybe the grades for him in his tape are just that, just not that translatable. And again, Jaylen Milroe's still there. Would they take Sanders over Milroe? I wouldn't have, but
maybe they see something that I don't.
I think that's worth talking through, Jason, is Milroe versus Sanders, because I think there are a lot of people that looked at him as the higher upside guy. In general, I think you looked at Sanders as having the preferable higher floor. But if you're now in the same mix and you're picking, it's an A-B choice of the third round, how do you view those two guys?
Well, if I'm the Steelers, I'm taking Shedeur Sanders over Jalen Milroe. I don't think, if you sign Aaron Rodgers, I don't think a separate package for Jalen Milroe is going to go over terribly well. I think you're drafting a guy to theoretically become your quarterback if things go well and he develops maybe a bit above average. I think that's possible with Shedeur Sanders. Jalen Milroe in a year developing an above-average way to become an NFL starter, I have some doubts on that. I'm intrigued by it. I think he could thrive in the right situation, but it's not going to be as a pure NFL quarterback, and I think that's what the Steelers would be looking at that pick as, is, maybe the Mason Rudolph, hey, we had a first-round grade on this guy. They could take Shedeur Sanders and say, look, we had a first-round grade on this guy. We really liked him, and we got him in the third round. We're thrilled about it.
How do you think the Steelers view the Justin Fields experiment relative to the conversation about Jalen Milroe? Do you think they view what they were able to do with him in situations as a success, the way he was able to facilitate the injury to Russell Wilson? Or do you think, I mean, there was a lot of smoke early in the offseason about that was the guy that they wanted, and then he ends up going to the Jets. How do you think they view that situation?
I don't think they find it too pressing. I think they value Jalen Milroe probably a certain way at quarterback, like they value everyone else. And if he's the top player on their board when they come around to pick, they'll pick him. But I don't think it's anything like crazy or special. I think it's just like, hey, you know what? That guy is a really good athlete. We like running quarterbacks. He could bring another weapon to the offense that we work on for the next couple of years. I could see that there. I do think that they probably do have Shedeur Sanders ranked above Jalen Milroe. So if Sanders and Milroe were there, they'd probably take Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know if the Steelers even regret how things happened with Justin Fields. I think they should. I don't think it looked great on them how they handled Justin Fields. I thought they put him in a position to fail, frankly, on that snowy Thursday night in Cleveland, bringing him in late in the game. He's frozen. I didn't understand late in the season why they didn't use Justin Fields more. I thought there was an opportunity to design sort of a special batch of plays for him and take advantage of what he does well. Even when things weren't going well with Russell Wilson down the stretch, I don't understand why they didn't turn back to Justin Fields. I understand this offseason, Adam, to your last point, why they didn't pursue him further. I would not guarantee $30 million and then $40 million tops for Justin Fields. That price is just a little bit too high. But as far as how they used him and really seemed to value him last season, I was a little surprised by that. And I used that to inform my thinking about Jalen Milroe, and that I don't think this is something that the Steelers would be genuinely interested in doing.
Didn't want to get too far without talking a little bit about Benjamin Morrison. Chris, he was another name that you talked about a decent amount.
Yep.
A solid cornerback. He ends up going to Tampa Bay at number 53, 21 in the second round. What kind of a loss is that for the quarterback conversation that we were having right before the break?
Honestly, in my opinion, like it's another sign that the corners that I really like are still falling. I still love Siobhan Ravel, Azariah Thomas, and Darian Porter. All guys I ranked ahead of Morrison, so I like this for the Steelers. Cornerbacks still should be very much available.
Cool. What do you think of that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, very much available, as we've been saying. I didn't expect the Steelers to get Benjamin Morrison. The medicals check out, great. I mean, I'm in the same place with it.
We are going to go to another very quick break here, so stay tuned. We got to get Jason out. He's got Pirates pregame radio duties. So, and Ray Fittipaldo is back in the studio. So, give us another minute and a half, 2 minutes, and we will be right back. We are at Mike's Beer Bar this evening. If you haven't made plans for the evening, feel free to come on down. Hundreds of beers, steak on the stone. Subscribe to the channel and like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We'll be right back.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
Okay, we are back at Mike's Beer Bar, the Post-Gazette's Steelers NFL Draft live stream. We got Ray Fittipaldo inside, hoping that fixes the audio issues a little bit. Ray, you were talking about the quarterback situation, Shedeur Sanders possibly falling. Something we talked about here in the little interregnum here was about how there's not a lot of possible landing spots left, even though it's 30-ish picks away from the Steelers. A lot of these teams between here and there either already have quarterbacks or very clearly have decided that they're going in different directions. So how realistic is it starting to feel for you that we're going to be in this conversation with Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility, Adam. I know the Steelers felt like we had a good meeting with Sanders. So if the value is there for them in the third round, I think they could pull the trigger there. It is going to be interesting. There's two things that are working in favor of that scenario. Number one, you want a quarterback. They're always pretty much pushed up around. So, getting a guy in the third round and then getting a running back in the fourth round is actually very realistic because this is a very deep running back class. And you can still get a guy in the fourth round who's going to be able to come in and help you. So as the picks go by, I'm starting to believe it could be a reality.
What is your view of the depth of the running back class here, Ray? Because something we were talking through is that there's a lot of very solid guys. You can go down to 15, 18 of these running backs that are still remaining, and there's not a huge talent discrepancy between them, which is what leads us to think that's something you might be able to do tomorrow rather than tonight. How do you view this running back class compared to what's available at these other positions? I think quarterback's on that list, but we've also been talking about how there are some very solid corners that are still there and may still be there when the Steelers pick at 83.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong. I've been away from the coverage for 10 or 15 minutes. It was Judkins and Henderson at the top of round 2, and then who else came off the board as a running back?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that is it as well. And
okay.
I think Kaleb Johnson is still Kuiper's best available. I'm not sure who you have, Chris.
So I think that's a perfect scenario. If there's only one or two more taken in the second round, then I think you're going to see the third round, a bunch are going to go off the board. And then still, even in the fourth round, if the Steelers do want to wait, I think they're still going to be able to get some quality players there. I have them taking Byshell Tootin. I think he could be there third, fourth round. Ollie Gordon was in for a visit. There's a bunch of guys. They brought in what, Chris? 9 running backs on visits, it's clear they're going to take one. It's just a matter of
Nine
which
running
round.
backs. Yep.
Yeah.
Ray, what do you think of those? What do you think of those cornerbacks?
It's interesting. I think corner could be a need for them, but I'm not sure it's a third round need. If you look at it, they got 6 corners under contract for the 2025 season. But, Darius Slay is one of them. He's 34 years old. This is pretty much his swan song. So, if you want to get a younger player to develop behind him, I think day 3 is probably the best spot to do that. To me, if you do it with his third-round pick, it's just too early. I think the only way that happens is if they don't believe in a quarterback in round 3 and they push that off, and then you think you can take a running back in round 4, then maybe corner gets pushed up. But I just don't see it as big of a need as running back, quarterback, or you could even make an argument receiver is the bigger need right now over corner. But we'll see what happens.
Ray, edge was also a position that we weren't necessarily talking about going into the evening, but Jerry Dulac brought up on Twitter. How does that fit in for you? With obviously you still have Nick Herbig under contract, you have Alex Highsmith under contract. I don't know. There's in theory some question about T.J. Watt's future, but maybe not really. Especially with the way those guys are going off the board, is there any way you see that value lining up?
Again, probably not in round 3, but to me it would be a luxury pick if you took one now. Nick Herbig is a very good number 3. The only way that would make a lot of sense is if they truly do have some reservations about that contract for T.J. Watt. But even then, T.J. Watt's going to be with you in 2025. So even if they thought it was going to get to the point where they couldn't retain him, it'd be nice to develop somebody behind him. But, I still think that would be somewhat of a luxury pick if you do that at 83.
Ray, what have you thought of some of the reaction? We talked about this earlier in the show, but I'm curious your impressions. We noticed that there's been some backlash to not drafting Sanders earlier because a lot of the national press was all over that going into the draft last night. Locally, we were talking about the defensive line a lot. That was kind of the consensus of all of our Post-Gazette insiders. And it seemed like the people who consume the local media kind of had that impression of the Steelers going that direction. But there were also a lot of people who seemed blindsided. Jack Besh goes to the Raiders at number 50. What is that, 58? The name we talked about a lot.
Mike Green, the pass rusher that I had as one of the top guys in the country, goes to the Ravens. Holy smokes there.
So those are some developments. But Ray, what's your impression been of how this is in the early going here? Derrick Harmon seems to be divisive in part because of the way the national press was gassing people up about Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it from the national perspective, I suppose it's divisive. But anyone who's covered this team, Adam, knows that the defensive line has been a priority. I think a lot of people thought they should have addressed it earlier. If you go back and just look, previous drafts, 21, you get Loudermilk, I think, 4th or 5th round. 22, it's Leal, 3rd round. I mean, it was time to take a defensive lineman in round 1. They got to get better up front. They definitely have to get younger up front. So I don't see it as divisive at all. I put out a video this morning. I think it's an A-plus pick. And I think it was a good pick for the Steelers. They can still address quarterback and some of the other positions later in the draft. I have zero issues with them taking Derrick Harmon at 21.
Ray, I ask you this. We talked about the potential of the Steelers double dipping at defensive tackle in this draft class. If Darius Alexander, who is still on the board right now, is there at 83, do you double dip with back-to-back picks at that position, or is that just too rich for your blood?
Not at all. I think this is a deep draft for defensive linemen. Think about it this way. You could play Cam Hayward and Derrick Harmon on the field at the same time in 2025, but eventually, Chris, Derrick Harmon is going to beat Cam Hayward. So you still need your future starting 3 technique for Larry Ogunjobi, who was released in March. So if you can get Darius Alexander there, it might be crowded for a season or so, but I would have no issues with that, especially for a team that loves to go through the trenches. Look at last year. I think, Chris, a lot of people thought Mason McCormick was a luxury pick. Look what happened. He was a 4th-round pick. He ended up starting because there were injuries. You never know what's going to happen in August, September. There could be injuries again, and it would be nice to have a guy like Darius Alexander in tow if that happens. I don't know that he's going to last, 25 more picks or whatever we're at right now, but if he was there, I think that would be a tremendous pick.
That'd be a heck of a pick.
Ray, are there any other guys on that defensive tackle list that you're also going to have to give a hard look to if they're available at 83? Shamar Turner of Texas A&M is number 2 on Mel Kiper's board, still remaining. Omar Norman Lott of Tennessee, Joshua Farmer of Florida State. Ty Robinson is a name we've talked about a fair amount on our podcasts leading into the NFL draft. J.J. Pegues of Ole Miss. And Deion Walker was a guy who spent some time with Mike Tomlin down at the Senior Bowl. Any of those guys intrigue you at 83, and if so, where is that cutoff for you?
Yeah, listen, Farmer and Pegues came in for visits. Pegues was a big, story at the Senior Bowl. He's a guy who can actually give you some snaps on offense as a fullback. Really talented. I think he had 6 or 8 touchdowns this year from the running back position. So he'd be an intriguing guy in the 3rd round. Hey, you got to be versatile, right? And if you're going to play on the defensive line, it's great that you have something else in your toolbox. So among that group that you mentioned, I would probably say Farmer and Pegues, because it seemed like they paid a little more attention to those guys in the pre-draft process.
Ray, I wanted to ask you about what's going on around the division. The Browns have obviously had multiple picks early on. The Bengals go Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight in the first 2 rounds. The Browns get Mason Graham, Carson Schwessinger at the top of the 2nd round, which was a controversial pick here at Mike's Beer Bar for us. Then Quinshon Judkins 3 picks later. The Ravens get Malachi Starks last night. And Chris, who'd you mention they just picked up in the 2nd round here?
Who did I just say? Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall. I had Mike Green as like my 15th or no? I think I had him like 18th or so. But I had him as one of my better players on the board. Mike Green is my 16th best player on the board. He has red flags. He has some allegations against him as far as domestic violence, which we'll see how that plays out. Maybe he starts off his career suspended. But like when you looked at his tape on the field, he abused people as far as an edge rusher. In the Senior Bowl, he was just so physical, moved people out of his way, quick and explosive, was a sack master at Marshall. I wonder what's going to be the situation there with his current standing case. I don't know many details about that outside of that there are allegations. But heck of a talent that the Ravens are getting there as far as a pure pass rusher.
But how do you like these drafts, Ray, just to pivot back to the question?
Yeah, so what's the theme of all those other 3 teams in the North? Other than Judkins, they're all defensive players. Teams are trying to figure out, how do we defend Joe Burrow? How do we keep the points down? How do we defend Lamar Jackson? Keep the points down. And, I can definitely get that. There's a very strong sentiment in the AFC right now with all these quarterbacks, and even in the division in the AFC North, that you got to be able to play defense if you're going to win games and be in playoff contention. So I'm a little bit intrigued by the Starks pick. They already had Kyle Hamilton. I want to see how that works. Chris just got done talking about Mike Green. Obviously some things to work through there, but the theme for me right now is the AFC North early in this draft is going defense.
Safety is a position I want to revisit with both of you guys. Some very solid players available. I believe Mel Kiper has Kevin Winston Jr. of Penn State number 1. A guy I really like is one later than him, Xavier Watts. He was on our big boards that we worked on, and the conversation that whole time was very nice player, but do the Steelers need this? You have Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, sign one, Thornhill, Does Xavier Watts being available change either of your impressions of that as a need?
Well, Mike Tomlin actually addressed that on Tuesday. I think somebody at the end of the news conference brought up safety, and Mike was like, "We just got Thornhill." So I don't know.
Ray, because someone said, like, "Oh, so you haven't brought back DeMonte KZ? Are you considering signing a third safety?" He said, "We signed Juan Thornhill," and then got up and walked away. That was just like, that was the ultimate sign of, like, I think they're okay at safety.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. You know, the Nicky Manwari thing, that was intriguing, but obviously they didn't pull the trigger there. I think safety, again, day 3, we're talking about a lot of positions where they could probably hold back and wait until 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. I think it's shaping up guys, quarterback, running back, maybe receiver with this next pick at 83, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes, especially if Shedeur Sanders is still on the board.
Let's chew the fat at wide receiver a little bit, Ray, because you brought it up. Some still intriguing prospects. Some solid names have gotten off the board. Jaden Higgins was a name we talked about a lot. Trey Harris went recently, but Jalen Noel of Iowa State is still available. Jalen Royals of Utah State. Savion Williams, TCU. Elik Iomanor of Stanford. Isaiah Bond, I think he also has some accusations against him right now, so we'll put an asterisk on that one. But some solid guys, and then there's also some names I think we've talked about later on, Ray. I think you had Shamir DK of Florida in one of your mock drafts as a day 3 guy. Tez Johnson is there, Xavier Restrepo, Pat Bryant. Any of those guys on your radar, not just for tonight, but going into tomorrow potentially?
Yeah, one thing to keep an eye on, and I know Chris and I talked about this on the North Shore podcast several times in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
A lot of those receivers and running backs they brought in, guys, also very good returners on special teams. And you got to look at it. Calvin Austin III is entering the last year of his contract. You could have a need for a punt returner, or simply you might want to have Calvin Austin just be your number 3 or number 4 receiver and take that off his place. So a guy like Jalen Noel would make a lot of sense for me. You bring him in as a rookie, number 4, number 5 receiver, put him back there on punts, let him do what he does. And they've also looked at a lot of kick returners too. I think we can all acknowledge that Cordero Patterson, at age 33, 34, there's probably a better scenario out there for the Steelers to have somebody else return kicks during the 2025 season. Some of those running backs, Bayshall Tootin, return kicks and punts at Virginia Tech. So there were a lot of guys who not only, especially when you get a guy like in the 3rd or 4th round guys, you're looking for guys to come in and be rotational pieces, maybe 3rd receiver, maybe backup running back, but that guy usually also is very good on special teams. And like I said, they do need returners, both in punt return and kick return potential.
Ray, how do you think they'd prefer to address that? You mentioned Tootin, he'd be in that running back mix, and then we mentioned some of these receivers. Do you think they give a thought to position in that circumstance, or do they just say, we like this athlete first, and we're going to get him because we think he is a good value for where we are on our board, and then you worry about the position later?
Well, you do have to take George Pickens into consideration. If they really truly believe that he's not going to be on the roster in 2026, then a guy like Iomanor out of Stanford might make sense. A big, rangy guy, you develop him behind Pickens and Metcalf this year, and then he's your other outside receiver in 2026. So, all this stuff with Pickens is going to play into that. But, if you're just looking at 2025, Adam, you don't really know what Roman Wilson is. You got a pretty decent feel for who Calvin Austin is, but I would be really intrigued if Jalen Noel was there at 83, and let's say Sanders is off the board, and it's down to a running back or a receiver. You still think you can get a running back in round 4? I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jalen Noel was the pick at 83.
Ray,
we have our next running back off the board. The Broncos select R.J. Harvey out of Central Florida.
Okay.
Interesting pick. Ray, something we had been talking about earlier was the decision not to trade back into the second round. I think George Pickens is part and parcel with that, because that was probably the only other way you were going to get into the second round tonight after you decide not to trade back last night. So they're holding on to George Pickens. A, B, they don't get back into the second round this season. Do you think that's going to end up being the right decision in hindsight? Because the thought I had today, verbalized earlier on the stream, was this feels like they were willing to take their medicine in the second round tonight with an eye toward, you got a bunch of picks tomorrow and you got even more picks in that draft a year from now. So within the next 12 months, you have the ability to add 15, 16 guys to your roster with those compensatory picks that you're getting next season. Was that the right move, you think, in hindsight?
Yeah, I think the way the Steelers look at it is DK Metcalf is their second-round pick this year. And you mentioned it. They have they are stockpiling picks for the 2026 draft. I think we all know that they could use that ammunition to go up and get a quarterback, but they're also going to have some other holes to fill on that roster too. And it's always nice, when you have 10, maybe 11 picks at your disposal, to go ahead and address those needs. So, it's going to be an interesting situation to see how it plays out in the future. But, right now I have no issues with that DK Metcalf trade. You add a number one receiver who's going to be here multiple seasons. I think that you don't always get a player like that in the second round. So I think it was a good move by Omar Khan to go out and get him at that point in March.
The Commanders select Trey Amos, cornerback out of Ole Miss, at 61st overall.
That's a name we had been watching. Ray, I got one last question for you, and then I'll throw it to Chris for any questions he might have for you. How are you looking at the George Pickens situation now that we can put the trade conversation seemingly to bed for the rest of the year? Do you think they might be looking more at a franchise tag situation? Are they looking more toward letting him go in free agency, potentially getting more of that compensation? Or do you think there's still a chance at a long-term deal now that we have this trade situation off the plate?
Very, very outside chance in a long-term deal. I think the two outcomes now, you mentioned one of them. You get that third-round comp pick the following year if he does leave in free agency. So that's one avenue that you could take. The other one is you hang on to him. You see how the season goes. And listen, if you're 4-7 at Halloween, you trade George Pickens, and you see if you can get a second-round pick in 2026, or you get a better third-round pick than what you would get in terms of a compensatory pick compensation. So that's the way I would look at it. I think more likely either a trade at the trade deadline, or you just let it play out, let him play the season, then you get that comp pick the following year.
Chris, you got anything for Ray?
Ray, we've been talking about the importance of this third-round pick, and it seems to be increased importance now that they haven't traded back and gotten their second-round pick. I feel like there's a chance that, we've been talking about quarterback, but if they draft a quarterback here, and this would be a better value, like Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe, I have the right value for them in the third round. Right. But if there are guys that they think can contribute right now, as far as players at running back, players at receiver, players at cornerback, should that take the priority here for the Steelers over drafting a young quarterback to be in their room?
Listen, franchise quarterback is very important. If they believe Shedeur Sanders eventually could be the type of player in the right situation, if you bring him along slowly behind a guy like Aaron Rodgers, then maybe it's not too far out in left field to make that call. Chris, we've been talking. You can get a good running back in the fourth round. You could probably get a Sampson Williams at receiver in the fourth round. So there are other ways to address those needs. If Shedeur Sanders, I told you guys they liked him. They thought it was a good meeting. If they think that's the value there at 83, I wouldn't have any issues with it. A third-round quarterback, listen, they did it with Mason Rudolph in 2018. He's been on their team for 6 out of his 7 NFL seasons. In the end, sometimes you just need backups too. So, listen, if Shedeur Sanders just turns out to be a backup, then that wouldn't be a terrible pick when you look back on it either.
Ray, any final thoughts before we let you go back in there?
No, we're getting close. And like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see if Sanders is there at 83. That'll be something. If that happens, he'll be in the building tomorrow, and you guys know there'll be a big media frenzy down here on the south side if that turns out to be the case.
Boy.
Yeah, that media frenzy to say the least. I guess we're part of that if that happens, right? We're the media, so we'll see how that unfolds. Ray, thanks for joining us. Glad to have you on this evening. Always appreciate your insights. Get back in there, and we'll maybe talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Have a good rest of the show. We'll see you.
Thanks. All right, Chris. We've lost Ray. We've lost Jason. It's you and me here in the trenches. Still, it's one of those things where we're way closer than we were when we started the night, and we are still a long way to go. I think we've been in those situations. Mm-hmm. I think of the draft 2 years ago where we did this live stream for the first time. This was about where they made a trade for Darnell Washington when we were not expecting it at all.
Right.
I guess maybe that's the conversation we should have now. Is a trade up for Shedeur Sanders in the fold?
I would say, look, the board is falling in a way where right now there are at least 3 cornerbacks that I really like. There's 6 running backs that I really like. There's 2 quarterbacks that I really like for that 83rd overall pick. I'm willing to let this play out because you know what? If someone takes Shedeur Sanders before 83, okay, fine, lost out on that. But they're in a position where they're going to get some really good value at that 83rd overall pick. And so I'd rather stick there, get that value, and keep my other picks than to worry about anything else. So I'm of the mind, don't trade up. Let's just see how far he falls. Because like you said, how many more teams are actually going to take him at this point? The teams that were going to take him, they probably would have taken him already. Shamar Turner, defensive tackle, off the board from Texas A&M to the Bears.
That's one we talked about at different points in time. One of the
Darius
Shamars.
Alexander continues to fall. It's another one that I'd have on the board as potential. Take him if he's there.
Yeah, interesting. What do you think the reason is that he's falling? Because he's been at the top. I think he's replaced Will Johnson as the guy that's been at the top of the board for some time.
Small school, so maybe people don't believe in him there. But I watched him. I watched a good bit of his tape. I think he will translate well to the NFL. He has the size. He has the athleticism. He's a little bit raw at times, but I think that's something that if you work with him, he'll figure out pretty quickly in the NFL. I think it's a mistake that he's falling this far. I don't think he'll be there at 83. I think someone will take him before then. But if we did an updated best available, Darius Alexander's my top player right now. Siobhan Ravel at corner. I was watching the screen there we had up there of the stream where my top things were.
Sorry.
Darian Porter, Azariah Thomas, Alec Yamanor. Like all these players were second-round picks in my opinion, and they're still there. So I'm having a hard time passing those up.
Well, then let me ask this question, Chris, because there's so many players like that you like, and we didn't necessarily expect them to make that move up in 23. That was their second, third-round pick, I believe, that year.
Yeah.
Do you move any of the day 3 capital? Do you shuffle it around to maybe get back into the third if you like enough of these guys that if you got 2 of them tonight plus Derrick Harmon, you're coming out of this draft maybe with more premium talent than you were expecting?
I wouldn't rule against it because I do think this is the sweet spot of the draft. Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle out of Tennessee, off the board to the Chiefs. But I think the thing is that they want to have a good number of rookies in, right? So it's about where they get these guys. Like if they traded their 4th round pick and a next year 4th round pick, or their 4th and their 5th round pick this year, could they get into the 3rd? I don't know. Like it just depends on what you're looking at there. Like at this point, I think the Steelers should be content with where they are. Let's see what happens at 83. If they get a playmaker, a guy, a running back, cornerback, receiver, all of that adds up to being a guy that can contribute now. And maybe there's less pressure to do so. But if they pick a quarterback, and if they get Milroe or Sanders with that 83rd overall pick, I think there might be a little bit of pressure to get back up into this third round and say, like, hey, let's get a guy that's going to be actually, like, making plays for us next year. Because ideally, one of those, whatever quarterback you take, they're going to be playing behind Aaron Rodgers and or Mason Rudolph.
Let's talk about Jaylen Milroe a little bit more, because I
Sure.
know we're having this quarterback conversation. It's Sanders. Everyone's talking about that. But I think it is noteworthy at this point that Jaylen Milroe did fall, because there was some first-round buzz around him. Some of it connected to the Steelers, but some of it not, just because of that enormous upside. But obviously he is seen as a project, and is that just maybe where we should have naturally seen this going with him from the very start, is that teams are going to want him to develop for at least a year, and that is going to drop any quarterback a decent amount without that polish. Is that what's happening here, or is there something else that they don't love about it?
No, I mean, just Jalen Milroe is just very inconsistent. Like, he is a great runner at quarterback. I saw someone compare him to say he has the speed of Lamar Jackson, but the power of Cam Newton. And I thought that was a very interesting way to put that. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, but he's a dynamic runner with the ball in his hands. The thing is, and he has a cannon of an arm. Like, when he whips it accurately, it's so like, wow, that ball is moving. But he's just not that accurate. And he still has to work on his throwing motion, and he can throw some real bad ducks, and he can also misread what's going on the defensive side of the ball a lot. So for me, I'm not on board with thinking Jalen Milroe is a franchise quarterback right now, but I get why he's fallen this far. I had him lower than Shedeur Sanders. Like, I had him in the 70s of my big board. So third round, though, that's the right value for him, in my opinion. I think that you put him there, that makes a lot of sense.
We're bringing in Brian Batko now from the South Side. The guests are coming hot and heavy here on the NFL Draft live stream.
Brian's in the racquetball court.
Hey, guys.
Brian, can you hear us?
Yeah, how we doing?
Good. How are you, man? What are your views on how the night has unfolded so far? Obviously, we've been talking a lot about Shedeur Sanders here and his continuing fall closer and closer to 83. Is that your headline as well, or is there any other pattern that you're noticing that you want to talk about?
I think that's certainly the main headline. Jalen Milroe would be right there with that. Doesn't it seem like a long time ago we were wondering, speculating if he was going to sneak into the end of the first round, at least by virtue of his draft green room invite to Green Bay. That sure seems like that didn't have any indication or anything to do with where his stock was. So let's remember that for next year when the draft is in Pittsburgh. Okay, just because a guy is going to the draft in person does not mean that he is particularly more likely to go in round one. So that would be the major ones. But I think round two has played out pretty well for the Steelers by and large. If you were a Tyler Shough believer, then aw shucks with him going to the Saints. But a lot of good running backs, I think, still in the mix. Even some wide receivers who could fall to them if they're interested in going that route. And as we know, the quarterback class still not very picked over other than the first three.
Let's do a vibe check, Brian. What if you just had to go on how it feels to you, if there's a name, what's the first name you're blurting out who's still on that board, who you most want to grab for? I think at this point, Chris, yours is Darius Alexander, as he continues to fall down this draft board behind some defensive tackles, more than we were expecting. Have I mentioned the names that you'd blurt out, or are there others that are on your list there?
I don't think I would pick another defensive lineman just yet, although I know Darius Alexander's a pretty good player who's having a bit of a precipitous fall here. I still think it's got to be quarterback or running back, or maybe, and here's a name that I will just kind of rattle off the top of my head here, a wide receiver who's sort of a jack of all trades, Savion Williams from TCU, also a pre-draft visitor. I think he is kind of interesting because he's got the size at 6'5", 220-ish to be a legitimate outside receiver. But TCU lined him up as a Wildcat quarterback and a running back. Could he also be your short yardage ball carrier in certain situations? So maybe you're filling two roster spots with one human there in Savion Williams. But of course, the potential downside there is that maybe he will never master any of those skills well enough to be an NFL contributor.
Andrew Makuba goes off the board to the Eagles at 64, which means we are now into the third round. The Steelers are not that far away, but seemingly so far away. Still, I think it's a little over 20 picks.
And they officially did not trade George Pickens for the second round.
Yeah, we talked that through a little bit with Ray, who just hopped off. Did you have any thoughts on that you wanted to expound on?
I mean, hey, I would believe it if they were listening to offers for it, or if they were receiving offers. But I tend to think that his stock probably was not quite that high, even if Steelers fans, especially those who are ready to be out of the George Pickens business, wished it would have been. So now I think the calculus becomes a little different. If you are still somebody who thinks it would be a good move to move on from him and deal him somewhere, do you feel like getting a third-round pick back and the type of receiver that you'd be getting at this stage in the draft would still be worth parting with someone of George's talent? So there's more that goes into that discussion than just his production on the field. But the whole second-round replacement idea is now officially out the window.
Yep. And as I thought it would be, I did not think that this was going to be happening early in the draft process or early in the offseason process. I considered that as a possibility. The more we got through it, I was like, no, they're not getting rid of this guy. I think they like the idea of him and Metcalf as the weapons of pass destruction to be paired up together for at least this upcoming season. And then if it worked out, they'll approach the possibilities of, hey, you know what? Maybe they give him a franchise tag. Maybe they sign him to an extension if they don't pay a quarterback. But it seems like they value George Pickens enough to keep him around at least for this season.
I don't know, Chris. I feel like that's too rosy of a view of George based on everything that we've seen from him his first 3 seasons. Obviously the ability is there. No one's ever really questioned that. But even that was a little bit inconsistent at the end of last season. And then, I just wonder how he is going to feel being the clear second fiddle now to DK. I mean, I think even early in his career, you could kind of argue, okay, between him and Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, he's still the guy who has the most raw potential and upside, and he's going to be the big dog at some point. Well, he got that opportunity last season, and the Steelers didn't see enough to deter them from going out and trading for now one of the few highest paid wide receivers in the entire NFL. So we'll see how George reacts to that, or maybe we won't if we don't see him for a while. It does not appear that he was one of the first Steelers in the facility for the first phase of optional offseason activities. We'll see if he gets here for the true OTAs in a few weeks, and then, of course, mandatory minicamp, which is always kind of the first check mark for any player going into a contract year who might not be particularly thrilled with his contract situation.
Here's my feeling, guys, about the George Pickens situation at this point. Unless you feel like there's a guy on this board who's going to be a day one starter, impact type of guy, there's not a lot to gain from moving him now. And the baseline compensation you're going to get from him can't go lower than a third-round pick next season as a compensatory pick if you just let him walk in free agency. It just seems like they keep all of their options on the table if they move on from this draft with him still on the roster. And I think that's preferable. And as Ray mentioned before he hopped off, listen, if you start badly next season and you have a losing record going into the trade deadline, teams make more and more trades than they did in the NFL at the trade deadline. Maybe he's someone you can move.
And there goes Darius Alexander to the Giants in the start of the third round.
Starting off with a bang. But, I think it's just a matter of what does it hurt to wait at this point to see how things unfold a little bit more. If you'd gotten that early second-round pick, different conversation. You didn't. At this point, I'd just leave my options on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the argument against that, Adam, would be, could you still get a Savion Williams in this draft with a pick if you think he's capable of stepping in and being an impact receiver from day one, or a Jalen Royals from Utah State? I believe he is still available as we post here into the third round. Jalen Noel from Iowa State also still on the board, correct?
I believe so.
But I see him as more of an inside guy, kind of a little bit redundant with Roman Wilson at this stage of the game. So, yes, maybe George's value will be higher in November. Maybe he will be the consummate pro and teammate for the next several months. And like Chris said, his kind of pie in the sky outcome is possible. I'd be surprised by that, but I guess you never really know. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it's going to happen, but not on draft night. It just seems like these are sometimes when the bigger deals, do take place. And I thought there were several teams, guys, who could really use an infusion of talent at wide receiver. The Raiders are one of the big ones to me, and they just picked Jack Besh, who I like him. I think he's a nice piece, but I don't see him being a number one receiver. And I'm not sure who Vegas's number one receiver is going to be. I don't have their depth chart in front of me, but I feel like that's a little bit of a rough situation right now.
Brian, I wanted to ask you about the running backs. It's a topic we've been talking through as we look specifically toward this third-round pick. I think we know they're going to take a running back at some point. The question is, what is the talent gap between the guys that are on the board here in the third and a guy you can get tomorrow in the fourth, maybe even the fifth round? I'm coming around to the view that the talent gap isn't big enough to justify going that direction in the third round unless you really love a guy. And if there's a guy you really want to bring in, different conversation in all likelihood, but there's so many different directions I think you can go tomorrow that if you like some of these guys at other spots, quarterback, cornerback, I just am not. The closer we get, the less I'm feeling the urgency to go running back. How do you feel about that situation?
Yeah, I'm with you. And, I think you could also argue, hey, what's the gap between Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, and Kyle McCord? And I hear you there on the quarterback front, but there's just a larger glut of players at the running back position. DJ Giddens, Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez from Miami, Trevor Etienne from Georgia. Still plenty. I'm not a big Cam Scattaboo guy for the Steelers, but he's still out there as we go into the third round. I mean, there are so many. Kaleb Johnson, he's still on the board, right?
Kaleb Johnson is still on the board. I'll even bring up a name well down Mel Kiper's list. We haven't talked about him much at all. Tuden is still there, yes. Woody Marks from USC. I was at that game in LA last year, and man, he was running hard all day against that very stout Penn State front. He was solid as heck, and he's 11th on Kiper's best available at the moment. There's a lot of names that I'd be genuinely excited to see as a Steeler. I think they're going to last past the third round.
Yeah, I mean, even some really deep cuts for like the true, draft junkies out there. Khalil Mullings from Michigan, who's a bigger back, and a guy that I had the Steelers taking in my mock draft, Team Sanders from South Carolina, really big back, pretty good long speed for someone his size, but obviously no pre-draft visit for him, so you wonder how much interest is there. But regardless, the overall point, the bottom line of all of that is just there are so many running backs still in this class, still available. That's why we talked about the depth for the last few months, and that's why I wasn't even really, sweating it for the Steelers when I saw Quinshon Judkins and TryVeyon Henderson.
Chris, you got anything for Brian? I got a couple more, but I wanted to give you a shot to get in there.
Brian, I've been saying that the cornerback position is not a position they look too hard at in the draft process, but man, Darian Porter, Azariah Thomas, Siobhan Revell, all still on the board right now. Would you throw out the plan for running back or quarterback if one of those guys is still there or all of those guys are still there when they come around at 83?
Maybe. That's a good thought, Chris, for sure. I mean, I didn't expect any of those three to be on the board in round 3. And, obviously Revell's got the injury issue dogging him from East Carolina to the league. Thomas didn't test very well athletically, at least with the straight line speed in the 40. And then Darian Porter did test amazing out of Iowa State and is a big body, but he just wasn't. He doesn't have a lot of production, and he didn't play a lot in college, and that always I think makes you a little bit nervous as an NFL team. But you gotta love the idea of Porter and Porter, right, as your outside corners. If not this year, then the Porter House.
The Porter, I like that. That's even better.
Trying to filibuster here because the Browns pick is in. I think there's some question about is this where Shedeur goes? There's not a whole lot of destinations available between here and the Steelers that even make a little bit of sense. And I was about to say both the NFL Network and ESPN were in commercial, which would lead you to believe it's an uninteresting pick. but now they both came back from commercial, and they seem to be like, all right, here's something significant happening. So she's rolling right into it. We're going to know in a couple seconds.
I'm not seeing any updates on Twitter right now, so this could be a live reveal for all of us.
Harold Fannin Jr.
A lot of people like this
Bowling
guy.
Green.
Yeah.
He was a great tight end. A lot of people thought he should have been the Mackey Award winner over Tyler Warren.
Yeah, I remember that.
Played at the small college level, so probably a little easier to rack up the stats. But I think the relevant piece, Brian, is it's not Shedeur at number, 67 is this? Yeah. Not Shedeur at 67, so you're starting to run out of runway here for Shedeur Sanders. Let me see. I had my picks by team up. Or no, that's picks by team, not the round. Okay, you've got Vegas next. Then you got New England, Detroit, New Orleans, Buffalo. Then the Jets at 73. Is that maybe the team that's raising your hackles a little bit?
Maybe, but outside of the teams that are picking between now and the Steelers, of course, there's always the chance that somebody would trade in and think to themselves, okay, we've got the ammunition to do it pick-wise. We're comfortable with Shedeur coming in as a third-rounder. The value is right at this stage. So I'm still fascinated. That's the thing. I mean, the Raiders, I thought, could be one with the Tom Brady connection. And Geno Smith's contract, guys, is it's lucrative, but it's not prohibitive after this season. So would they want to do that to Geno and have Shedeur breathing down his neck immediately? At least to this point, it seems like the answer is no. The Browns were linked to him a lot in the pre-draft process, but they keep passing on opportunities to bring him in. I still wonder if the Rams are a franchise with the right sort of culture and infrastructure to at least take a big cut there. But I'm sure a lot of people nationally are saying the same thing about the Steelers. Our Jerry Dulac reported that they do have a first-round grade on Shedeur. This could be the Mason Rudolph situation all over again, albeit with somebody who is a lot more polarizing and high profile than Rudolph was back in 20.
It'd be some thick irony if Mason Rudolph was doing radio interviews talking about Darian Porter, Iowa State goes to the Raiders at 68. So that's a guy we have been talking about. But yes, wouldn't it be funny if we had Mason Rudolph doing radio interviews, bristling at Shedeur Sanders being the first-round grade guy?
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be like, they screw up the pick. I'm just going to have to point to the playbook if you've got any questions. Yeah, that could be a real time as a flat circle situation there for sure. But all right, well, the dream of the Porterhouse is gone now for the Steelers secondary. You know what? I'm surprised that some of these guys are still out there. Kaleb Johnson from Iowa really stands up because he is a bigger back, but he's got some breakaway speed for sure. The Steelers have really liked Iowa prospects in recent years. They've gone to the defensive side of the ball with most of their scouting, and obviously Logan Lee in last year's draft. But yeah, Kaleb Johnson, he's already got the black and yellow uniform on, so he would make a very seamless transition to Pittsburgh if he's still on the board when they get up here at 83.
Any other names, Brian, that are that you're paying attention to is still being available here beyond the big ones? I know Darian Porter was a big one for Chris. Who's on that list of your favorite guys?
Well, circling back to something Chris brought up when I first hopped on with you guys about a second D lineman and doubling down on that position, I still wouldn't predict that, and I don't necessarily think that's the best use of draft resources. But Mike Tomlin was pretty clear last night saying that Derrick Harmon, he's not a nose tackle. That's really not his game. They're never going to use him there. Could his college teammate, Jamari Caldwell, be sort of that big two-gapping, run-stuffing, old-school, unconventional nick? Now, Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday at his pre-draft presser that position doesn't really exist anymore in the NFL, which is true. But, maybe they think he's got a little bit more versatility than that. Isn't just Big Dan McCullers, the second coming, but actually play in sub-packages and rush the passer too, because he's pretty nimble. So the idea of reuniting two Oregon defensive linemen in Pittsburgh is at least somewhat intriguing to me.
It's wild what they do in the draft when like we don't know what's going on, and I just look up and I see John Cena and Idris Elba. I'm like, what are they doing? Because I think that happened last night when they did the announcement of the schedule, like when they're going to announce the schedule of May 14th, and they did a whole long bit with that. And I'm just like, I only hear what's in my ear at the moment because we're here at Mike's Beer Bar. But
Kyle Williams, the best separator wide receiver I had is coming out the slot, goes to the Patriots. Really good pickup by them.
Interesting. Yeah, they sure are bolstering things for Drake May between Will Campbell, TryVeyon Henderson, now Kyle Williams. Maybe Mike Vrabel's going to get them going up in Foxborough sooner than later.
Brian, one thing we had been talking about with Ray that I wanted to get your impressions of as well is what's going on around the division. Obviously, the Browns have the most picks, so I feel like it's the easiest to say they're having the best draft just because you've got 4 picks in here and we're in the 3rd round. Harold Fannin Jr. joining Quinshon Judkins, Carson Schwessinger, and Mason Graham all selected tonight. The Ravens go with Malachi Starks, Mike Green in the recently completed 2nd round, and then the Bengals have Shamar Turner and Demetrius Knight Jr. Your thoughts on how much better the division? I mean, that's a lot of players selected before the Steelers even get their 2nd tonight.
How much did you guys talk about the Ravens taking Mike Green?
Not a whole lot, so curious your thoughts as well.
Well, I don't – you guys have the computers up in front of you, so be my guardrails here, but I haven't done a ton of research on the Mike Green situation because the Steelers were not in the market for an edge rusher in this draft. Obviously, he slipped in large part due to some sexual assault allegations, multiple instances, I believe, in his past. And this is a Ravens team that, yes, getting a beast rushing off the edge is a no-brainer for them, but they've got the Justin Tucker situation, which, if true, is pretty heinous that they're dealing with. And now they bring in a player who has these red flags on his track record. So, man, I wonder what that Ravens, Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh presser is going to be like tonight down here in Owings Mills.
Yeah, something to watch. Terrion Arnold is out for Detroit. They announced Isaac Tesla.
Don't ask me. That was
He wasn't on my board at all in terms of receivers. But that's the pick at number 70, so we're 11 picks away. Or no,
was that was the Lions, right? Because Terrion Arnold announced it. They are, man, I'll tell you what, that front office has some cojones because this is 2 or 3 years in a row now that they make some picks that you're just like, where did that come from? That is not what the hoi polloi of Draftnik Media had that guy going. So, I mean, hey, it's only crazy if it doesn't work. Jahmyr Gibbs looked like a huge reach at the time, and he's a baller. Jack Campbell, people thought that was a reach. He's looking good. And now so far in this draft, they take Tyleek Williams in the 1st round, and then Isaac Coleslaw here from the Razors.
Yeah, let me see what the grade Lance Zierlein had on him was. Good backup with potential to develop into a starter. The athleticism, I guess, tests off the charts. He has, NFL.com has him listed as the number 1 athleticism score among receivers at the draft. So I think
it's the jumps. He has a 4.43 40-yard dash, which is really good, but then he had a 39.5 vertical and a 10-foot 9-inch broad. That's really explosive, and a good 20-yard shuttle at 4.05. Yeah, the guy's got quicks, he's got explosiveness, he's got speed. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the production score ranks 48th among receivers. So one of the bigger spreads you see on these NFL.com profiles. I'm not sure how many of you in the audience end up looking at those, but I spend about 3 months of my life looking at these every single day. So that I don't see spreads like that very often because they even have it color coded. The production score is red, the athleticism score is blue, and the total score is green, Brian. So big spread there from our friend Lance Zierlein.
Let's just put this in perspective on Isaac, not Tesla from Arkansas, who I believe transferred from a D2 or D3 school, if you still got the profile there. He just went ahead of Jalen Royals, Alec Iomanner. Yep. I mean, that is a wild pick from the Lions, if you believe the people who scout these guys. and write about them for a living have any idea, which we might not.
Yeah, or is it just a pure, I don't know if analytics play is the right word, but a testing play where you look at the underlying and you think if we get this guy in our system, we'll be able to make it work. And if there's a team that you believe it from right now, it's probably the Lions, right?
Yeah, I think the Slaw went ahead of Shedeur Sanders. I mean, we can say this about, a number of picks now that are happening as we get into the third round. But, yeah, I mean, that is not one that I had on the proverbial bingo board.
Yeah, it was Lane Searline had that as a 4th or 5th round pick. So, I don't know, not completely outrageous, but certainly a surprise considering a lot of these guys that we've been talking about as potential picks for the Steelers. Chris, you have anything else for Brian? Jason Mackey's back in the building here after doing Pride's pregame, so we can let Brian go here in a second. But Chris wanted to give you a chance to ask Brian any more questions you had.
Brian, my top 5 big board players available. Me not talking about rear hair and actually pull that up here. Wow, of course, now it chooses not to just be available. There we go. I have Siobhan Ravel, Azariah Thomas, Elek Yamanar, Xavier Watts, and Shedeur Sanders as my top 5 available. And then it's just a run of running back between Kaleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, all these DJ Giddens, and all those other guys. If you are Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin all rolled up in one person and you get to call in your pick, who are you looking at right now?
I forgot about Xavier Watts. I think he's a good player. I'm surprised he hasn't. But I might go Shedeur. We may have reached the point on the headache talent graph that I think we're at the right spot on the x-axis and y-axis that now might be the time. It could crash and burn. If it does, it's a third rounder, and maybe you're right back to square one next year. But, the complicating factor there, I think, guys, would be Aaron Rodgers it emerges from the wilderness next week and signs with the Steelers. Then what do you do? I mean, Shedeur is the number 3. Does he even see the field this year? If he doesn't, then what are you doing next year? Are you still drafting somebody in round 1 potentially? I don't know. It would be complicated. It would be complex, but it would not be dull.
I think it becomes complicated, Brian, because if you take Shedeur in the 3rd round, clearly there are a lot of teams now that have picked him over 3 times. If he falls to the Steelers, the draft or the potential trade value isn't there if you decide to go in another direction next year. I think that's the risk you run, is that it's almost like if you do bring Shedeur in, it's either you're willing to let that pick be a bust, which, maybe it is worth just letting it be a bust to you to take a chance on a quarterback at a value spot in this draft, or you're going to have to let him go for little to nothing if you really want to take a quarterback next year and you already have that Mason Rudolph contract on the books.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are probably recent instances of this. Joe Milton was not a 3rd rounder. He was a 6th rounder, and obviously the Patriots flipped him this offseason. Malik Willis, I don't think he fetched much from Green Bay. I'd have to go through and scour some other QB trades in recent years. But, yeah, it's fascinating that we are truly facing this now. And, part of me thinks everything Mike Tomlin said about him on Tuesday, maybe it wasn't so much a smokescreen as we thought. Maybe he really was interested in the player, and they're going to push the button now. But the other side of me thinks they weren't willing to take him at 21. Maybe they just don't want him. So
Vernon Broughton out of Texas off the board now, and now the Bills are about to pick. Vernon Broughton goes to the Saints. The Bills are about to take a pick here. You assume they're not going to take a quarterback with Josh Allen in fold. This continues to get really interesting with who's actually going to be available.
Busy night for Lee Evans for the Bills. It's Landon Jackson of Arkansas, another edge off the board. Brian, any final thoughts? We got Jason Mackey back in the building here. We're going to slide him back in, but wanted to get your final thoughts here so you can get back in there for the pick.
Hey, it's Shedeur. All of our lives are about to become more interesting. He will be – I don't think it's a stretch, guys, to say he will be the most high-profile player on the team immediately, and he might be inactive on Sunday. So I think that's a truly intriguing dynamic, but one that might also be kind of a headache or kind of distraction or whatever you want to call it for whatever team ultimately decides to make that move.
Well, talk about the national local split. You know, Shedeur Sanders is going to be the go-to talking point on any national show if he's in that Steelers quarterback room, whether or not that is warranted. So certainly something to keep in mind as we get closer to the pick here. Brian, thank you very much for hopping on with us. Really appreciate it. Everyone else, we're going to take a quick break here and get Jason Mackey back to the table here so we can get his thoughts on how things have unfolded. We're at Mike's Beer Bar, just a reminder. Hundreds of local beers on tap and in bottles and cans. Steak on a Stone. So if you are looking for a place to grab a drink for the evening, come say hi to us. We'd really appreciate it. If you're at home and you're just joining us for the first time, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. So stay tuned. We will be back in another couple minutes here.
Hey, boys.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
Back. We've got Jason Mackey back here on the Post-Gazette NFL Draft Steelers live stream.
Missed you guys.
We did. How was the Pirates pregame show?
It was great. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is very good at baseball. So are the Dodgers. It's going to be a tall test for the Pirates. That's my analysis.
They'll be going well into the shank of the evening, as I like to call it, starting at 10:10 out on the West Coast. I love this.
So will I. By the way, I'm over here drinking coffee. I'm doing post game too. Yeah,
post game as well. I know you probably don't. I love those West Coast baseball games.
I do too.
My hottest take is I'd love if every baseball game started at 10 p.m. because I'm a night owl. And a lot of times...
Y'all are crazy.
I hate these...
Y'all are crazy.
Yeah, that's
after
nuts.
After 10, I am turning off baseball.
I hate the 6:40 starts because I don't settle in for the evening until around 8 or 8:30. And now, with the 6:40 starts and the shorter games because of the pitch clock, It's the 7th inning sometimes before I settle in.
Well, settle in earlier then. How about that?
I got stuff to do, man. Anyway.
What kind of stuff do you be doing?
I don't know. Walking on the trail, walking the dogs.
Trail.
Yeah, I got a trail. I got the
this man
Montour Trail
said.
close to my house, so go for some walks, wash some dishes. That's one of my big household tasks. Take the garbage out, that type of stuff. But anyway, let's talk football rather than mundane chores. Azaria Thomas, Chris, goes off the board. He was one of your guys that you were looking at, and as we're starting to look for alternatives to Shedeur Sanders and ways that you can justify not going that direction because there's so many solid players. He was at the top of the list. He's gone. How many more guys are left that you feel are in that you can justify not taking Shedeur range?
3, Siobhan Ravel, cornerback out of East Carolina. Wide receiver, Elek Yamanor out of Stanford. Safety, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. All 3 of those guys, I think, are starter-capable guys right now at those positions. After that, I have Shedeur Sanders actually ranked as my 4th best prospect available right now. Right behind him, Dylan Sampson, running back out of Tennessee. And then after Sampson starts a run of the running backs where Kaleb Johnson's still available. And like Ray said, there's probably going to be some really good running backs around forward because there are still a lot of them are sitting right there right now.
Jason, what about you? It feels like the justifications are falling away as we're getting done. There's still, we're at 74, so you got 9 picks to go.
Little surprised the running backs have not gone more, guys.
Yeah,
I know while I was next door, I thought I'd see some. I had the draft tracker up on my screen. I thought I'd see some running backs going off the board, but man, they're still there. I think that's probably where Chris's head's at, if I'm not mistaken. And I have a tough time making a case against it. I know when we got into this earlier in the show, I didn't think Kaleb Johnson will be around. Well, he still is. Dylan Sampson's still around. That spot between where we're at and where the Steelers are going to be drafting is getting smaller and smaller. So, I mean, if one of those 2 guys is available, I'd have a tough time arguing against it at 83.
I feel like I've liked Kaleb Johnson a little bit more than the average Bear in Steelers media, and maybe it's because we expected them to go in a different direction, or because we expected him to go higher, and it's a little bit of a surprise that he has fallen to this point. So, Chris, give me your scouting report on Kaleb Johnson a little bit, just because he's not a name that we've talked about a lot, but he's at the top of that running back board for a lot of people.
Kaleb Johnson is a good power back. He is a guy that's going to be able to get downhill. Like, he reminds me a lot of Naji Harris, and that was funny when Jason compared them. I was like, that was my comp. But that's the thing, is that he does not have the home run speed, and I think that's what the Steelers are really looking for in this draft class. They want someone to be explosive, to be, hey, if we give you the seam, can you take this 4-yard gain and turn it into 20 yards because you just hit it so quickly that everyone's now in chase mode? I think that's what the Steelers want. That's just my perception of what they want at running back this time around. I could be wrong. They could feel that Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell are already that, and they'll go with a power back to mix up with them. But there's a lot of guys that fit that explosive rate, and that's why Kaleb Johnson initially was on my board as a higher pick, but then when he ran like a 4-5 40-yard dash, I was like, I don't know. I think I might still go for it. That's why I have Dylan Sampson ranked ahead of him right now on my big board. But Kaleb Johnson certainly is right after him on my big board. So it's definitely someone I have my eye on.
Pat Bryant goes to Denver at 74. He was a name we had maybe talked about more as a day 3 type.
Yeah.
I know Brian Batko was looking forward to Pat Bryant possibly being in the mix. So you could have Pat Fry and Pat Bry. Now that possibility has fallen away. I don't know. He was a guy that I liked as a day 3 pick. I think it's a bummer for the Steelers that he's not going to be on the board there. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
No.
Move on.
He was not on my board at all for someone the Steelers should be looking at. No.
We got the 49ers selection here. It's Nick Martin, the linebacker from Oklahoma State. So now we're getting close. Getting closer and closer. Gentlemen, we're getting into that range we were in last night where you're just anticipating them being on the clock so you can get this over with. So coming up with the rain delay material to get between here and the pick gets a little more difficult. Jason, were there any names that went off the board while you were away as you're catching up here that you were a little bummed to see fall away.
Let me go back and look here. Darius Alexander was one. First pick of the third round. I was hoping he was somebody that might fall. Chris, before I left, was talking about doubling up, and the more I've thought about that, the more I liked it. Obviously, that's not going to be a possibility. He goes first pick of the third round, 65 overall to the Giants. I can't say anybody else that I'm looking at least Zerai Thomas going to the Jets. I guess that's one. Not really. A lot of what I still like is in front of me. I was going back and forth. I was talking to somebody on the other side about Jalen Milroe. Would that be an option? And I kind of argue with myself. Like, is Sanders, does that make more sense? Does Milroe make more sense? I'd probably go with Sanders in that scenario, just because I don't think if you sign Aaron Rodgers, like we were talking about, there's going to be an appetite to bring in Jalen Milroe. But again, guys, I don't think I've moved off the cornerback idea. I think that's the type of talent you can get. You can't necessarily get another day in the backup plan for that would be a running back. I just don't know if it would be Kaleb Johnson. I think I'd probably prefer Dylan Sampson if you put the two of them against one another.
Siobhan Ravel goes off the board, though, pertinent to that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good pick by the Cowboys.
Siobhan Ravel goes to the Cowboys at 76, so that's another name off of that cornerback board. Who's left here? Let me refresh my page. I think Quincy Riley now, Chris, is the number one on Mel Kiper's board. Noel Williams, Jacob Parrish. So we're into those. I think I asked that exact question earlier. Does anyone past those names we were talking about intrigue you? So now those are the three that are there. Quincy Riley, Noel Williams, who was a playmaking guy, and then Jacob Parrish from Kansas State.
Jacob Parrish, I think, is the best pure slot corner in this draft class. That's about it. All these other guys, I rank them as much, much, much lower.
I think I saw Noel Williams in like 4th or 5th round range. He was mocked to the Steelers because he does have that playmaking ability. It would be useful to add, but I agree with you in terms of this feels a little high for him at this stage. I like Quincy Riley as a prospect. I don't know if I like him for the Steelers. Played a little bit with him in we were talking a little earlier, Chris, about playing the new NCAA video game. I felt a little bit more prepared for the draft this year, just in terms of the guys that were not necessarily Steelers players or Steelers targets. I feel like I knew more college football players overall. So that was a nice change of pace from the last decade. Carolina's announcing their pick now. We'll update you on that in a second. Let's talk about the tight ends briefly, because there were some intriguing tight ends in this draft that we talked about. It was like, man, the Steelers don't really have the need, but some of these guys are really solid players. Maybe we could look in that direction. Clearly other people got that memo, because now Gunnar Helm is the only name that I think we spent any time talking about at tight end. All these other guys are gone well before the Steelers are picking at 83. Kiper has Gunnar Helm as the best tight end remaining. Then it's Mitchell Evans of Notre Dame, Jackson Hawes of Georgia Tech, and just I think Jalen Conyers was the name that came up in some late mocks. Rondé Gadsden the second. Gavin Bartholomew's in that mix as well, but these tight ends flew off the board, guys. Was that maybe one of the surprises of the draft for you?
At one point it was. At one point we had more tight ends gone than quarterbacks.
I think we still do.
Still do. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. I thought it might have caught up while I disappeared for 30 minutes, but yes. I'm not sure why that is, Adam. I wish I had a magical reason for it. Wow, that's surprising.
I'm not even going to attempt to name or to pronounce that last name for the guy who the Panthers just picked.
Princely Omenimelan. What's wrong with that? What was so hard about that name? Princely Omenimelan.
The second part, everything other than Princely is what.
I can do it now that you've said it, but I can't do it. I can't read that well sometimes. I know.
Here's somebody I was thinking about on the other side, guys. Where are you at with Savion Williams? Have we talked about that?
We talked a little bit about him.
Man.
You talk about it further.
Revisit it.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's somebody who would be justifiable at 83?
That was someone Ray Fittipaldo brought up while you were gone. So.
Okay.
Fourth round. That's
fourth round?
Yeah,
okay.
That's where I have.
I'm fine with that. I think it might be a bit of an overdraft, but it is somebody who intrigues me.
Hey, he's got some
versatility, has some size,
athleticism, a lot of things. The thing is that I fear that he is a jack of all trades and master of none, and like you get stuck with the DeMarvin Leal at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I do like the idea of having a toy to play with.
Sure.
You know, it's. I wish I felt better about Arthur Smith's ability to play with that toy. I feel like we need to get him some batteries first, but I'll leave that be.
I was about to go into a gag where I said, well, let's talk about fullback. We haven't gotten into fullback tonight. I was going to say, let's throw out some names for you guys to see how you responded to it.
Oh, man, they have.
I clicked on Mel Kiper's best available fullback, and there is no one. There's not a single fullback listed.
No players
are
available for this position.
Why put it there? Why put it there, ESPN, if there's no one you like? But I guess let's talk a little bit about the offensive line. Maybe not so much tonight, but there are still some questions with this group in terms of depth tackle. Maybe a guard as you're looking toward Isaac Seumalo potentially moving on after this coming season. Chris, are there any guys that are on your radar as we're kind of waiting out the 83rd pick here? Not necessarily tonight, but going into tomorrow, as intriguing as day 3 options.
You're saying guys that will be intriguing as day 3 options?
Correct.
I mean, like everyone that's currently still available. I don't know. Okay. If we were to assume, like, it's tough to tell because we got to see who falls, right? Like if you're like, I have a top 5 right now of. I just posted this again. Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson, Jalen Royals. Any one of those guys. So they fall to the 3rd round, I'm taking. Or the 4th round, excuse me. And then I still have DJ Giddens. Got to update my big board a little bit with some guys that have been taken. Jalen Royals, like I said, is there. Tate Ratledge is off the board. I really liked the idea of him. DJ Giddens, a running back that I think fits the Steelers really well. If he's available in the 4th round, that's a heck of a pick. Marcus M'Bow, if the Steelers wanted to go with a backup tackle because they don't have a primed one there, that would be interesting. Did C.J. West get picked? I might have forgotten to check.
I don't believe C.J. West has been picked.
TJ Sanders got picked. That's what it was. It's the TJ and the C.J. that messed me up there. R.J. Harvey was picked. Jalen Milroe still sitting right there. Jalen Noel, the receiver that Ray brought up, I've liked him. But I thought he was a 3rd round pick. The problem is that there's plenty of other guys that I think are good 3rd round picks ahead of him right now. So we're getting closer.
Pat Pete back on the scene for the Cardinals, announces their pick. Jordan Birch, the edge from Oregon. Interesting that Patrick Peterson has taken on Cardinals ambassador roles again after that divorce that led him to Pittsburgh. Jason, what's your level of confidence, though, relevant to that offensive line conversation in Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu and their ability to get it together enough this year that maybe you don't feel tackle is a huge need on day 3?
Yeah, so here's where I'm at with that. In the immediate, I think the Steelers' offensive line is probably better than people give it credit for. I think it took on water late last season. I'm not sure that was fair. I think you saw some rookies hitting a rookie wall. I think you saw Dan Moore Jr. probably look better than he really is early on. I think you saw Russell Wilson hang on to the ball far too long. You saw some things wrong with the Steelers' offense, and it was a bad amalgamation of things. I think coming back this year, moving Broderick Jones over to the left side, getting Troy Fautanu back at right tackle, I think those are going to be very big things. I liked Mason McCormick at right guard. I think there's a lot there. Now, long term, Adam, I do think there's a piece that they need to be kind of aware of, and I don't know if that piece is going to come in the 6th or 7th round. I think it's highly unlikely, but Isaac Seumalo isn't going to play forever. They're going to need to replace him. I'd like to feel a little bit better about their depth. I mean, maybe that's something that, again, they get done in this draft. It's probably more a 2026 problem. To sum it up, I feel better about the offensive. I don't think it's a gigantic problem the way it's kind of painted out to be, but I don't think it's finished yet either.
Jalen Milroe goes off the board at, 79 to the Texans, so the Steelers are 3 picks away.
Stay on target.
Yeah, boy, I think at this point he's going to be there. I think they're going to be there when you refer to Jalen Milroe and Shedeur Sanders.
What if they take neither?
But here's I think the most relevant piece is many of those running backs are still there. And even if you get into a hard, how many more picks? So the Steelers get there at 83, then you got 30-ish picks till their next one. You'd have to go through 15 running backs in the next 30 picks for them not to get a guy that you could get excited about, right? Am I wrong?
Sorry, what was the question?
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
There's
but
so many
you're
running backs left, and they're not going off. So even if there is a run of running backs after the Steelers pick at 83, let's say they go quarterback.
Yeah, but you're not going to get a Caleb Johnson or Dylan Sampson, right?
That's true.
That's probably how they're going to look at it.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I do think there's a drop off. There is the thing is it's between 83 and 123. We're talking about 40 picks. There could be a run of the running backs. Justin Wally, wow, cornerback out of Minnesota. Okay. That was a guy the Steelers, I think, looked at as a potential later round pick. He's off the board. He was a cornerback they really looked at there. So interesting to see him go this early.
How about this, guys? Just to step back and think about it for a second, the running back conversation. The Steelers could wind up with a guy's first team All Big Ten, All-American, or the SEC Conference Offensive Player of the Year in Dylan Sampson in the 3rd round.
Pretty good college winners right there, if you ask me.
I mean, that's just wild to me. I guess, or Shedeur Sanders and all the hype that came with it.
Dylan Sampson averaged over 7 yards a carry. That's hard to do in the SEC, Chris. Sometimes you see that from a guy like Ashton Genty. I don't want to diminish what Ashton Genty did at Boise State because he was electric. He was awesome to watch.
But it's different
regardless of the competition level. But Dylan Sampson did it against great athletes, and I know this was not, maybe the greatest year for the SEC, but it's still SEC competition. You average 7. If you average 5 against SEC competition, that's a big deal. He averaged 7.
Shout out the Texans. They drafted both the Iowa State wide receivers, Jaden Pickens and Jalen Milroe, for C.J. Stroud.
That's a short commute for them.
Yeah. Wait, is it?
Iowa
to Houston?
Ames, Iowa to Houston? I guess Houston is... Texas is a big state.
It is a really big state.
Struggling with my geography.
It's all right.
Geography B situation. I did finish second in the geography B twice in my
We got a breaking, boys.
Career.
We got a breaking.
What do you got now?
Caleb Johnson to the Steelers.
Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa. Chris nailed the pick last night. We're ahead of the show here tonight. Hopefully we can get a graphic up on that shortly. But Caleb Johnson, wow. You just referenced it, Jason. First team All Big Ten. Kind of the Naji, we made the Naji Harris comparison. We talked earlier in the show about we thought that they might go for a little more pop, a little more, in that direction. Instead, they go for a guy who's a little more like Naji. So, Jason, your thoughts on that ultimate decision there?
A little surprised. Not going to take issue with it. You're bringing in a consensus All-American. How mad's anybody going to get? I think Daniel Jeremiah had him ranked 45th out of all of his prospects. Put up a bunch of numbers, an offense that, fairly pro style. I'm not going to call Iowa's offense prolific, but enough there. Can break longer runs. I think that's in his toolbox. Put up some numbers. The comp we had on him was Tim Worley. What Steeler fan isn't going to like that? I like the size. I think it's a nice compliment to the other two. We talked about that a lot throughout the evening. How did they get somebody who fits in concert with Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren? So I like all that stuff, man. I do. I'm curious how he fits. I'm not sure I see it immediately because he's not a traditional third down back. I mean, maybe he's, kind of your bell cow, and then the other two fill in the cracks. I'm not sure. I don't think we need to know right now, but I like the player.
Again, he's a good power back. Now, the thing is that were they going to go for more explosiveness? The one thing that Kaleb Johnson does have is his lateral quickness is a bit better than Naji's, I think, just as far as how he hits the zone blocking holes. I like that about his tape. And he does, again, he bowls over people, and that's explosive. He just doesn't have the high-end speed that Dylan Sampson has, which is why I ranked Sampson ahead of him. But I do like Kaleb Johnson as a player. I think that he's a heck of a player. But again, this further shows you just how far down they actually had Shedeur Sanders.
Come on, that was nothing compared to your freak out last night. That's the best you got?
You want me to freak out right now? You want me to go? I will go ham. I will go ham on camera right now. Yeah, you're poking the bear. No, but seriously, listen. The Steelers clearly had a plan going into this draft. They wanted to bolster the defensive line because that was a big problem. But they know they need a running back for the future. Jaylen Warren is a good back for now, and he has a lot of upside as far as the guy there. But Jaylen Warren has never had to carry the load for an offense in the NFL, and part of that is because I think he's a smaller back. They love him as a guy that can team up with someone. Kaleb Johnson can be the thunder to Jaylen Warren's lightning. That's where I think that they hope that Naji Harris and Jaylen Warren could work out a little bit better. Dynamics didn't work out there. Now, you give Kaleb Johnson a guy that likes running in more of the schemes that Arthur Smith has drawn up. I think that Jaylen Warren will be a fine fit there. Now, those two can probably work in tandem a lot better. You have fresh legs in Johnson. Jaylen Warren hasn't been used up too much. There's an exciting running back pair there right now. And again, like I was saying there, I'm not going to be as emphatic as I was last night, but when I told everyone that Shedeur Sanders was not a first-round quarterback, I did think that he was a third-round quarterback. If they had picked him here, I thought Shedeur Sanders would have been a fine pick. But clearly, he is being valued at the NFL as further and further down. There were so many people that said he won't go past the Steelers at 21. And then going into tonight, too many people said he won't go past the Steelers at 83. Clearly, the smokescreen was just really good from Mike Tomlin.
Does Shedeur get picked tonight?
I don't know. Who picks him? Because he's been sitting here forever.
Do the Steelers trade back in? We talked about that earlier. Do the Steelers trade back into the third round with Kaleb Johnson in the fold? I mean, here's my quick impression, folks. I think Kaleb Johnson was the number one on the board for the running backs for so long. You can react to the run of running backs that we know is coming, or you can lead it. And I wonder if Kaleb Johnson and Dylan Sampson had been off the board, how that might have changed things. But they had the ability to add the number one running back for most of the night to this point, pretty much since TryVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins went off the board toward the top of the second round. Clearly, they just saw the value there, and that makes sense to me. Something that also sticks out to me about Kaleb Johnson, guys, is not a ton of mileage at Iowa. You think of Iowa as 3 yards in a cloud of dirt, that type of program, ground and pound. You would imagine that a guy like Kaleb Johnson comes in here with some mileage on the tires. Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State goes to Tennessee with the 82nd pick, so technically before the Steelers, even though we're talking about them at 83. But Kaleb Johnson had barely over 200 carries in his first 2 years at Iowa, then explodes in terms of production last season, 240 carries, 1,537 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns. He comes here, I think, still with some not a ton of wear and tear, and the ability in a running back room with Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell to not only come in fresh, but to stay fresh, because you can diversify what you're doing with those guys. I guess talk about that aspect of it as well, that they limited the damage on him. I know that helped. For example, Miles Sanders, the Woodland Hills product, who went to Penn State and then went on to the Eagles and has made a nice career for him. So if you wonder if it could work out in a similar, different style of back, but you wonder if it could work out in a similar way for Kaleb Johnson, where he gets to the pros with a lot of juice left. Jason, I'll throw that to you first.
I didn't know who you were going with there. Yeah, and I mean, it's a great opportunity for Kaleb Johnson and the Steelers because nothing is required of him right now. I don't think there's a scenario where Kaleb Johnson's going to carry the ball 300 times or something crazy. Like, they're going to want to involve
it. I mean, he might earn it, and that might be great.
Yeah, that's fine. But, I mean, they're paying Jaylen Warren a lot of money. They're going to want to use him. They're paying Kenneth Gainwell some money. They're going to want to use him.
They're
I'm going to
announcing the
shush
pick.
it while they announce
Yeah,
the
they're
Steelers
announcing
pick.
the pick here at Mike's Beer Bar, so keep it a little quiet for the folks who are not watching our stream, even though they're here. Lynn Swann is announcing the pick. He's got his terrible towel out. He's got his Hall of Fame jacket on. Kaleb Johnson's been announced, and now Lynn Swann is flashing the Super Bowl ring. So there it is, folks. Officially from the podium. He did it again.
Somebody's yelling about a quarterback behind us.
They're mad. They're a little bit mad at Mike's Beer Bar. I don't want to give short shrift to Kaleb Johnson. So before we get into the inevitable Shedeur discourse, any thoughts on the pick here?
It's the right pick. I think you're getting a weapon in the backfield. Look, like they're showing the highlights here. This guy makes guys miss. When you look at the like at the running back position, and you look what's a difference maker? Yards after contact per attempt. Kaleb Johnson averaged 3.9 yards after contact per rush, and he faced a lot of contact in an offense that did not have a passing attack that was going to scare you. So he was the guy. People saw him coming, and it did not matter. He would still power through. That's very much what the Steelers want to have in their backfield. At some point, he can get away from guys. I think he's quick to get to his top speed. It's just that his top speed isn't as top as some of the other guys. 4.7 in his 40-yard dash there. So I think this is a solid pick. We're going meat and potatoes. This is what the Steelers need to be doing. They need to be shoring up the run game. They need to be shoring up the trenches. They've got the defensive trenches. Now they've got the running back to pair with Jaylen Warren for the long term. Why overpick a quarterback that is clearly falling way out of this position? Again, people were panicking. Why are they picking Shedeur Sanders in the first round? Clearly because he's not being picked in the third round right now. And he might go to the fourth round. So if they had picked Shedeur Sanders in the first round, would you feel better, knowing that he really would have lasted the fourth? No, you'd be ridiculous. So I think that right now they're addressing their needs. They're getting valued guys where I valued them, where I think a lot of other people value them. They're handling their business right now. That's what Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin should be doing.
Jacob Parrish goes off the board to the Buccaneers, the next pick after the Steelers. Jason, listen, there was a ton of discourse about Naji Harris and the decision not to extend that fifth-year option, which would have paid him millions, or give him just a full-blown extension at the rate that he got from the Los Angeles Chargers. The Steelers end up dipping in the third round, using a kind of premium pick, but not the first round pick. And they've essentially replaced what Naji Harris brought to that backfield that they liked. And they have a guy that's going to be around for years to come. And they've now freed up the money that they otherwise would have had to spend on Naji Harris by giving a lesser contract to a rookie in Kaleb Johnson. So I think they came out ahead in that whole exchange, and I'll be the first to say that I had questions about it throughout the season, especially the fifth-year option. I don't know that I would have necessarily gone there with the extension, but the fifth-year option is something I probably would have done, and now I feel like the Steelers look a little bit smarter for having saved the capital, especially, again, we keep talking about 2026 as a potential pivot point with the quarterback class, with the compensatory picks that they're getting. Things feel like they're lining up very well for 2026 and beyond, regardless of what happens in the year ahead, to go out and get some free agents. Now you can spend on someone that you're not spending Naji Harris's money on.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, Adam. I guess I'll disagree with you a little bit. I didn't have any issue with them not picking up his option. The lack of extension, I didn't have any problem with that. I'm also not in the camp that the Steelers failed miserably with the Naji Harris pick. I'm not going to get upset about it. I thought it worked in an okay way. It was time to move on. It was really nobody's fault. I don't think he was a great system fit for what Arthur Smith wants to do. And if you want to take a shot with Caleb Williams on a much different contract and repurpose those dollars, man, great. Absolutely. I don't know if Kaleb Johnson's the answer. He might be. I like a lot of what Chris is saying. One thing that I didn't get a chance to say this before, but I'm kind of intrigued by is his pass catching abilities. I've read disparate things. Some say he is okay as the third down back, can maybe do some of that stuff. His blocking kind of inconsistent. Maybe that's where it falls. But you know what? If it's that, or if it's paying Naji Harris what it would cost for a fifth-year option or an extension, man, I'm absolutely fine going younger.
So the whole thing with me about Naji Harris. I thought the 5th-year extension made sense because it would have been $6.7 million, and now you wouldn't have had to pick a running back. This could have been a wide receiver, a corner, a safety, a lineman, whatever you wanted there. But to your point, now they have a guy that projects as the #1 running back on a rookie contract for the next 4 years. He can play behind Jaylen Warren this year,
and you can spend that money another way.
And you can spend that. You can spend that now. Granted, you're spending that next year, but still, to your point, like it's hard to get mad at Kaleb Johnson. I love his build. I love his skills. I love what he brings to the table. I think he's a talented player, and he'll be fresh and he'll be bringing there. And another thing about I think the factors of the Naji Harris situation is I think there was some souring of Naji Harris and the Steelers over the past 4 years. Okay, yeah. I'm saying the obvious here. But when we met Naji Harris as a rookie, this man was so excited to be part of the organization, and they were so excited to have him. And I even think his 2nd year, he was so excited. But in his 3rd season, in his 3rd season, when Kenny Pickett was voted as team captain over him, I just remember seeing the most dejected version of Naji Harris ever, and then that's where his tone just changed drastically around everything. He was just like, I guess we're gonna fight do our best here, and so that's when it was just like this doesn't feel the same. And I think it was the same thing this past year when the team didn't see him as a leader when he was trying to be a leader. I think he took a step back. Now you disengage with that. He goes to the Chargers. He's going to be with Omarion Hampton there. Good for him. Hope the best for him. But now you get Kaleb Johnson in, who has a lot of the same traits as a power back, as a guy that's going to push you around, that's going to break off tackles, that's going to and is going to be with a better offensive line. I think that's the one thing Naji Harris did not have is he didn't have a developed offensive line. I think the versions of the Steelers' offensive line over the next 4 years are going to be much better for Kaleb Johnson, and he's going to be able to take off much more easily for the Steelers. This adds up for me. I think it's a good pick.
Here's the thing about Naji Harris too. This is almost a societal thing. Like we're so eager to like assess blame to one side or the other. This is bad. This is not bad. Naji Harris deserves a heck of a lot of credit for playing in every single game and running his tail off and giving every bit. He never shortchanged anybody on effort. I love the way Naji Harris played the game. I'm going to pump his tires at that one. And then I'm going to let some air out with this. He also averaged 3.9 yards per carry.
Yep.
He didn't really break anything away.
That's how much Kaleb Johnson averages after contact in college.
Right. So, I appreciate what you did here, man. We enjoyed having you in Pittsburgh. Love watching you play the game. The longest run you've ever had as a pro, 37 yards. I'd like somebody with a little bit more home run ability and somebody to just give me a little bit more than you did. It's not all your fault, but I'm not paying $7 million for that. No way.
Chris, what is the ability of Kaleb Johnson to be different from Naji Harris in that way? Even if they have a similar running style, down to down, maybe they look similar, but does he have more, I don't want to say necessarily home run potential as the guy that's going to blow defenses away and pull a Saquon Barkley or that type of thing?
It's not the home run potential.
But a little more explosiveness.
It's the fit
in between.
I think Naji Harris was a gap runner for Alabama. When you give me the hole, I hit the hole, and we just working with that. And we're gonna have such a good offensive line. It will not matter what hole you tell me to hit. I'm hitting it hard. Kaleb Johnson, when I looked at his tape as Iowa, looked like a guy who, when you could run the zone, the whole point of Jamari Caldwell off the board to the Chargers, that was a 4th-round target I had for the Steelers. Good nose tackle there. Derrick Harmon's teammate at Oregon, so that's an interesting prospect. But anyways, on Kaleb Johnson, when I watched him play at Iowa, I would see him read the zone and make I hate to do comps. Comps are just so all over the place, but Le'Veon Bell-like reads where he would stop, stutter, turn, and attack the right hole based off of where the defense. His reactions to how defenses were playing him, I thought were very strong. So if you're looking at Kaleb Johnson, if you're looking at what he brings to the table, I think that he does a lot of the things that naturally could happen more in Arthur Smith's offense, who wants to run more zone runs at times, and he'll mix it up with zone and gaps, but I think that that's another place where he fits it more, where it's not going to be that he hits the home run speed, it's that he's going to get to his top speed a little bit quicker than Naji Harris and do so in more fluid with the offense than what Naji Harris had been able to do the past few years.
There's something between a home run and what
And a
Naji
single.
Harris did.
And a single.
Right. Can this guy be a doubles or triples
He can
hitter?
hit more doubles and triples. I think that's who Kaleb Johnson is. Because remember, Le'Veon Bell was not a home run hitter, but he was a heck of a running back. And he can make plays because he bowled you over and because he would hit those gaps hard. I think that's who Kaleb Johnson can be if the offensive line develops and he gets in the right situation.
Paul Zeise is here. I'm going to bring him in. Paul, can you hear me? I can't hear Paul yet in my ear. Paul, we'll bring you back in here in a second. I'm sure we're gonna get into the Shedeur conversation with Paul here.
Oh boy!
Because I'm sure Paul has some thoughts on that. Paul, can you hear me now?
I got you. I
got you as well.
My microphone was not plugged in, but it is now. So now you can hear me.
Nice. Okay, so Kaleb Johnson is the pick at 83. Shedeur Sanders is not. I'm just going to let it rip here.
Listen, I think that all of the people who are out there trying to make some sort of larger, grander idea about why Shedeur Sanders is still on the board, the fact that the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, has passed on him twice, should probably put a lot of that to rest. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the Steelers basically are looking at it, and they didn't feel he was a first-round pick. They clearly didn't think he was a third-round pick. And so now, I don't know where he goes. I don't know where he ends up. But at the end of the day, he's the kind of player that probably there's going to be some team that's going to grab him now. That's probably where he should go. So to me, it's not that surprising that really the Steelers passed on him. I didn't think he would still be on the board. I didn't think Milroe would still be on the board. But clearly, we sort of out here in the world evaluated both guys a lot differently than a lot of these teams have. But the other part of it is there's not a lot of teams that need a quarterback. I mean, if you look at the board, I mean, the next possible place where someone could pick a quarterback, I guess, is the Browns in about 5 or 6 picks or whatever it is. As far as the Steelers, to be honest, I like what they've done in the first round, and I like what they did in the third round. They got guys that are actually going to help them play this year.
Yep.
And I think that's the most important thing to note. When you've got guys – when you've got a team like the Steelers who, they feel like they're on the cusp of being able to win, you want to add players who are going to play and contribute. And quite frankly, even if they had picked Shedeur Sanders, he's not going to help them this year. So it's not a shock, that they decided to go with a running back, which they clearly need, and a defensive tackle, which they clearly need. And both guys seem like they're ready to play right now.
I think they've also done a nice job, relevant to that point, Paul, of splitting the atom between, yes, these are guys that can help them now, but they also have the ability to be fixtures for a ways to go here. And as we talk about them possibly having an eye toward that 2026 quarterbacks class and all of those picks that they have, I think there's ways you can just draft for need and say, well, these are the players we need for this season ahead of us. And then I think they did a better job of saying, yes, these, and I think this is part of the calculus with the DK Metcalf trade as well. A lot of people said, are you ready to compete this year? I think the answer is probably no if you look at the Steelers as constructed tonight as we sit here. But it's not necessarily about just this year. And these guys have the ability to be cornerstones of a good Steelers team in 2026, in 2027, in 2028, as we go into the later part of this decade. And that's part of how I'm looking at this, Paul, is this isn't just a play for 2025.
No, I mean, I think that's the key is we talked about the guy they grabbed last night is a guy that, they'll probably put in their starting lineup for 8, 9, 10 years. And I think, Kaleb Johnson's a running back. He'll run his wheels off for 4 or 5 years and then, move on and get the next running back. But the key to me is they basically have decided that they're going to go with a bridge quarterback, whoever it is. If it's Aaron Rodgers, if it's Mason Rudolph, whatever, they're going to go with a bridge quarterback this year. I still expect them to take a quarterback maybe later in the draft. I mean, who knows if things continue to break the way that they've broke, maybe they have another shot at Sanders and Milroe. I doubt that both guys will be on the board when they pick again. But to me, I think the reality is they understand that, you know what, it's been a long time since they've won playoff games, and they really need to make sure that they make their team as good as they can possibly make it for 2025, while also drafting guys who are going to be around for a long time.
I also want to bring up something that Brian Batko mentioned right before he hopped off, guys, and I think it is relevant. If you still intend to sign Aaron Rodgers and you have Mason Rudolph under contract and you draft Shedeur Sanders, there's a chance that Shedeur Sanders is a circus as an inactive quarterback for a big chunk of the season. And I think relevant to the board that you had, Chris, that we were getting to the point where the Shedeur Sanders value matched up with where he would have been selected. But Kaleb Johnson, to me, was one of the few exceptions that was available who, maybe you had better than that 83rd pick. And you're able to get him. And so I think if there's only a few guys that could have fallen to 83 that would have justified maybe not getting the Shedeur Sanders. But I think they avoided a major circus show, at least as we sit here right now.
I think the circus would be less about Shedeur himself and more just about the
national frenzy that would ensue.
Because I think there's a lot of people that really believe in Shedeur Sanders, obviously, because Mel Kiper is probably somewhere right now just bawling his eyes out. But when you look at how people talk about Shedeur Sanders, there's a lot of people that believe he could be the guy. He could be a franchise quarterback. And listen, whenever you get a young guy in, I mean, remember when Kenny Pickett got to Pittsburgh and the Kenny chance that would happen when he led that touchdown drive at the end of a preseason game against fourth stringers, and people were like, that's it, that's the guy. And listen, I was one of the people that said I think he can work out if the right things are lined up for the Steelers. And so I wasn't thinking it was that crazy of a thought. But when you look at that, people want to believe in the young quarterbacks. People want to believe that the next franchise guy is here, that they see them, and that's the guy they're rooting for. And there's a lot of people that root for Shedeur Sanders because, like Paul said, Paul, your favorite athlete was Deion Sanders. There's a lot of people who love Deion Sanders in my generation, your generation, and the generations after because of what he meant to all of sports. So naturally, Shedeur Sanders, who was braggadocious, who had the swagger, who went from an HBCU to a Power 5 team and made some big plays, turned a terrible program into a 9-win program this past season. Naturally, people are going to be on board with him. Heck, I just quote tweeted Zach Austin, Pitt basketball forward, who was the dunk phenom of the team this year for Jeff Capel. He is a diehard Steelers fan, and he has been heartbroken the last 2 days that they have not taken Shedeur Sanders. It's a real thing. So it wouldn't be Shedeur Sanders as much. It would be the fans clamoring and the noise around. As soon as Aaron Rodgers had a 2-pick, no touchdown game, or as soon as Mason Rudolph had a bad game, everyone, that noise would be, Shedeur Sanders time. It's Shedeur Sanders time. It's Shedeur Sanders time. Just stop playing around. Why are you doing it? That's what they would have been in for. And I guess it's less about Shedeur and anything that he's done. It's going to be more about the hype that would be around him.
Jason, your thoughts on that?
I'm so tired of talking about Shedeur Sanders.
Are you kidding me? I can't wait to do this tomorrow for 3 more picks.
I'm over it, man. Who cares? At this point, he's about to be a 4th-round quarterback who has generated far too much attention because of his
But don't you, hey, Johnny Unitas was cut by the Steelers, and Tom Brady was a 6th-round, I'm doing my best Mel Kiper impersonation, and Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick, so don't you dare think that he could be, I'm right with you.
Listen,
the
entire NFL's passed on him for 4 rounds. Nearly, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
And I agree with you, the circus that would surround every little thing that happened. And to Paul's point, this is what the Steelers are telling us. It's going to be a bridge quarterback. They're willing to wait out Aaron Rodgers. If they don't do that, it's going to be Mason Rudolph, whatever. Shedeur Sanders doesn't fit into it. Let's shut up.
Well, and Paul, here's the thing. I don't want to do character assassination of either Deion or Shedeur, because I think a lot of what has gone on around that Colorado program and their critics has been tied to the braggadocio and that type of stuff. I don't personally have a problem with the Sanders family, and I don't want this to become about a referendum on who they are as people, because I don't think that that's fair. I think it's more people in our business and the way they have built it up into a circus. It's on our side, not necessarily the people at this table, but the media side has turned it into a circus in a way that maybe the Steelers just didn't want, regardless of the Sanderses and how they conduct their business.
Well, here's the thing, and I said this on Twitter a little bit ago. Teams aren't passing on a chance to take a quarterback they think is their quarterback of the future because they don't like the dad or they don't like the circus or they think the guy is a quarterback that can take them where they're going to go. They're going to take him. This is just 100% about evaluation. This is, there's some other positions where they might, pass on a guy that they're not feeling one way or the other, but we know that the NFL is a league that really is desperate for quarterbacks. They need quarterbacks. So there's no way in the world these teams, 32 of them have said 3 times, you know what, we're going to pass on this guy who might take us to the top simply because we don't like him or because he talks too much or any of that kind of stuff, right? That's just silly. I actually quoted Marty Blake. You guys are probably too young to know who Marty Blake is, but he was a legendary scout in the NBA. He's a guy that actually was the general manager of the Pittsburgh Condors way back when. Anyway, in about the 80s, there was a 7-footer who had a bunch of character issues and all that, and there was all these questions about it, and the Associated Press asked Marty Blake, hey, is this guy going to drop? Is this guy going to drop? Is this guy going to drop because his character issues? And Marty Blake said, listen, if Charles Manson were 7 feet tall, someone would draft him and say, so he had a bad year or two. And it's the same thing with a quarterback. If Charles Manson were a great quarterback that a team thought could make him win, someone would draft him and say, okay, so he had a bad year or two. That's reality.
Charles Manson. That's we could have gone with a lot of other people.
Well, that's one of the greatest. Listen,
But to your point, I agree.
That's one of the greatest quotes ever to the Associated Press. Hey, listen, if Charles Manson were a 7-footer, someone would draft him and say, so he had a bad year or two. And that's the same thing with a quarterback. That's why I'm not buying all this stuff when it comes to all of the reasons people keep bringing up as to why Shedeur Sanders hasn't been picked. And here's the funny thing, Chris. Mm-hmm. Nobody seems to be talking about Jalen Milroe not being picked.
I was about to bring up Jalen Milroe. Let's talk about that, guys.
Hold on. But to Paul's
I can't
point,
find this quote, Zeise. I swear you're making it up.
No, I'm not making it up. It's true.
I know.
To Paul's point, Mike Green has multiple sexual assault allegations against him right now, and he just got picked up by the Ravens on day 2 of the draft. So and it's not like that's an outlier. How many guys have we seen in the NFL with bad allegations? Deshaun Watson was out there with all these known allegations out there. The Browns were like, we will throw away our entire franchise for this man, just with all of that information available to us right now. It's just people, if it's like you said, if I think I can win a Super Bowl, if I think I can win a championship because you're on my team, you're going to make me money, I am going to sign you no matter what, as long as you're not in jail. I mean, that's what it is.
Especially now we get to the 4th round, and if you look ahead now, right, the Ravens aren't taking a quarterback. Seattle probably isn't taking a quarterback. The Saints already took their quarterback. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Browns take one now at 94. But if the Browns don't take one, I'm just not sure where you're going to see. The Raiders have 2 picks. Maybe they take one. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's just not that many places where you can look and say, well, they're going to take a quarterback.
Emory Jones Jr., the offensive tackle from LSU, goes to the Ravens here as we're getting to the late stages of the 3rd round. Paul, you brought up Jaylen Milroe. Jason, I want to start with you. We're talking all about Shedeur, and I think for good reason, because of the two, I think Shedeur is the more polished, ready-to-go guy. If you're taking Jalen Milroe, it's going to be a bit more of a development situation. But he may have more upside as an NFL quarterback than Shedeur Sanders does. What's your read on his continued fall, possibly into the 4th round I think a lot of people looked at him as 3rd round at the latest. And so this is becoming a pronounced fall for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're not out of the 3rd round, but I look at it exactly the way you explained, that he's not a polished quarterback. He's not somebody who's going to contribute under center
he's
this
a
year.
Big project.
Maybe next year he's going to be a gadget play, athletic guy, which is fine, but I'm not going to be in a hurry to draft him right now. I'm just not. Like, teams are still, as we're seeing with the Steelers, addressing very real needs. So I am fascinated to see whether it's going to be Milroe or Sanders or option C, the next quarterback off the board. But Milroe in the 3rd round, based on his struggles as a quarterback or what he's limited in doing, I can't say it surprises me.
Yeah, I mean,
Paul,
again,
go ahead on Milroe, Paul.
no, I think the thing about Jalen Milroe is, and, you know, I'm not really, you know, a talent scout. I don't watch a lot of film like Chris. But I can tell you every time I watched Alabama, I was extremely underwhelmed by Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
So that's anecdotal, but my point is I think there's a lot of things he has to get better at. And I worry about, you know, some of the things that I watched him do, the intangibles that I didn't like.
I'm going to break in here, Paul. Milroe goes to, I believe I heard him say, yes, Jalen Milroe
There
goes
it
to
is.
Seattle at number 92 in the 3rd round. So Milroe is off the board before Sanders.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Chris, what do you make of that?
I think it just further confirms the. Listen, again, I've been saying, all the people that are saying, oh, Shedeur Sanders, I don't like his attitude, or he's too cocky, and I don't think that has anything to do with this. I think it's all about he doesn't have NFL height, he doesn't have NFL arm strength, he doesn't have NFL speed, he has NFL accuracy, and he has NFL moxie. That's it, and I think that's it comes down to those brass tactics there. If I'm an NFL franchise, I need to see something that wows me, something that says, oh yeah, if I hone these things as a coach, I can turn this into a star. Like, for example, Jalen Milroe, they're playing his highlights right now. That throw he had against Auburn, where he threw that touchdown in the corner of the end zone, it was like 4th and 30 or whatever it was.
I remember that play.
It was the perfect throw, and he has the arm strength to get the ball in different spots. He has the speed to get the ball in different spots. He has the size to run through people, the power to run through people, and he's doing that.
That was a nice throw right there.
He has several passes. The problem is he just don't do it consistently, and
Exactly.
he's very wildly inconsistent. But if I'm a coach, I say, you know what? I will take that inconsistency and I will coach it up. And if I can't make it happen, we wasted a 3rd round pick on it. But I'm giving myself the chance to coach him up where in 2-3 years, maybe he'll be ready to be a starter. And if not, oh well, we'll swing again at it. But that's what you take a shot there. But the thing is with Shedeur, Paul, Shedeur got those upsides. Like the upsides of Shedeur is that he's accurate and that he would be ready to go a little bit sooner, but he doesn't. Like Tyler Shough is tall, has a good arm, and can run a 4.6. Shedeur has none of those things. If Shedeur had those things, he'd have been a 1st round pick this year. That is why he has fallen this far. It's not about people hating him. It's not about this whole blackballing thing that people are putting out there. And listen, I'm the first person to acknowledge there are people that do get blackballed at times. I don't think Shedeur is one of them.
No, and here's the other thing. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the Raiders with back-to-back picks are going to take Shedeur Sanders. I don't believe he's.
I wouldn't be shocked.
I don't believe he's going to get past either the Browns. I think still have a pick, or the 2 Raiders pick. One of those is definitely going to be Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, it has to be.
Does it?
I feel like we've said it has to be Shedeur Sanders for about 2 days now.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it feels to me like, you know, they're not going to let him. I just can't see if you're the Browns or the Raiders, you're gonna, you know what I mean? The Raiders need a quarterback. The Browns obviously want to take a quarterback and have somebody there, quarterback of the future. I don't know. It feels to me like the Browns have played this probably as well as anybody, if you think about it. And now they have a shot to get the guy that some people thought they were going to take number 2.
I mean, we're getting to the point where I would love it for Cleveland. Not because I love Cleveland, but because I think, we talk about the Steelers and the Browns having similarly messy quarterback situations, but I think Cleveland's is worse than the Steelers. I don't think they have a guy like Mason Rudolph that can win games, somewhat consistently, that can get you to that 9-10 win threshold, which would be a great season in Cleveland, right? You got Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson, and I think there are a lot more question marks about both of those guys, Jason, than there are about about Mason Rudolph?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. We got to get Jason out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to get going.
He's got to go to Pirates post game. Paul, stay with us. We're going to come back for another segment here. Just going to get Jason shifted out. We're at Mike's Beer Bar. Just a reminder. Probably a little late for you to come down, but they have hundreds of local beers on tap. They've been great hosts for us this whole weekend. Really appreciate them being involved. Subscribe to the channel if you're joining us for the first time. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
You there?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. I had to have Andrew turn my mic back up. Paul, can you hear me?
Yes. This is probably going to This is probably going to cause the biggest meltdown of the night if the source is correct about who the Browns are picking.
Who said that about the Browns?
The Browns, I just read from Mary Kay Cabot, who's probably as dyed in as anybody. They were taking a quarterback not named Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, here she is, the chief football administration officer. She is announcing the pick. Dillon Gabriel. Paul.
I just said
Dillon Gabriel.
When I just saw that, I know that the meltdown is going to be incredible and epic, for real. I love it. This is pretty hilarious.
I think that's my shocker of the entire draft. Chris Carter is off camera. He's going to be back here in a second. I saw that the Browns were on the clock. I said I better hop back in here with Paul, even though we weren't quite ready on the mic. But wow, Paul, listen. Dillon Gabriel did great things with Oregon. I have been. I think if Bo Nix has only one hater, it is me. I don't love how that Oregon system translates to the NFL. I haven't seen a ton of results. Listen, he was a great player in college. I don't think those skills translate to the pros the same way. I didn't think it about Bo Nix. Maybe some people in the chat will tell me that I've been wrong. I watched Bo Nix lose every big game he played in for like 25 years. And yeah, he's won some games in the NFL. You got to give him credit for that. But boy, certainly did not have Dillon Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders.
So now, I mean, again, we go back. There's no way he gets past both Raiders picks, right?
I mean, if they don't take him with the first one, Paul, I think it makes you question whether they're going to take him with the second one. Just to catch people up on the order, we're into the shank of the evening here in the third round. It's New England, Atlanta, Minnesota, 2 Raiders picks, San Francisco, Atlanta, and the Texans. Getting into the compensatory range, so we're almost out of the normal third round picks.
Well,
so Chris Carter's sliding in here. Go ahead,
Think
Paul.
about it this way, Adam. The Patriots obviously have Drake May. The Falcons have Penix. The Vikings have J.J. McCarthy. The 49ers have Purdy, who are getting ready to sign to a big deal. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is in Philadelphia. And Houston has C.J. Stroud. So basically, it comes down to those 2 Raider picks. And if they pass on Shedeur Sanders, he will not be picked tonight, obviously. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know. My favorite quarterback of them all, honestly, was probably the kid from Louisville. I think he's got a lot of upside, right? I see why everyone's in love with Cam Ward. I'm okay with Jackson Dart and also Jaylen Milroe going ahead of Shedeur Sanders. But, Chris, you've got to explain Dillon Gabriel to me. I mean, because this is ridiculous.
Paul, I literally went to Chris Dell, our editor behind the scenes right now, and I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't get Dillon Gabriel. Like, it was to the point where when I was talking to people about this quarterback class, Dillon Gabriel was so far back that some people were like, absolutely not. Don't even touch him. And, like, to the point where, like, Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Riley Leonard, all those guys would go before Dillon Gabriel. And, like, now he's a third-round pick. Like, okay, maybe I just missed something there. But, my goodness, for him to go over, I get Jaylen Milroe. Again, the upside of Jaylen Milroe makes a lot of sense. Speed, power, size, arm strength, just lots of inconsistencies that you can work to make more consistent. Dillon Gabriel, though, man, I don't know, man. Like, Paul, like, if I'm prime, I am like being like, is my son okay right now? Because there's a lot of questions.
Let's start here. He's 5'11".
Yeah.
And that's not to say that just because you're short, you can't play quarterback, but he's 5'11". Let's go here. He's 24 already. In fact, if I'm looking at his birthday, I think he's going to be 25. No, he'll be 25 during the season.
Yep.
I don't get this one at all.
At all.
I don't get it at all.
I'll throw this out here. If you're going to take
what's that?
I said I'll throw this out here. The only possible explanation I can come up with in my mind is that he profiles similarly to Bo Nix. just in terms of the age, the career trajectory, being the transfer, going from one power program to another. And then Bo Nix made a decent transition to the NFL and set a baseline that maybe the Browns are saying, hey, if we get the baseline of what Bo Nix did from a guy we get at the end of the third round, throwing in that mix with two guys that we can't have that much confidence in Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson, maybe we find lightning in a bottle, like giving him the room to kind of come in as the guy that everyone wants, probably compared to Pickett and to Deshaun Watson, and giving him a chance to be a bit of a hero. Xavier Watts goes off the board to the Atlanta at number 96.
I just think, again, I think one of the things that I always say is there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in college that never get picked. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that he slid down to the third round, I mean, we're still talking about 100 guys not being off the board. I mean, you're one of the elite players if you're still, you know what I mean, if you get picked in the top 100 or whatever. I just don't understand. The Dylan Gabriel one, I could sit here and, as Chris said, I could sit here and make a case for Cam Ward, obviously, who was the number one guy, Milroe because of his upside. I actually love the kid from Louisville. I think he's going to be a really good, he's a traditional drop back passer. I like him. You know what I mean? And Jackson Dart is a guy who, skyrocketed up everyone's boards. I could make a case for all of those guys over Shedeur Sanders. But I think whoever picked Dylan Gabriel is smoking way too much wacky tobacco.
Here's my question, Chris.
My favorite post right now, Noah Hiles posted a pic. He said Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel rolling up to the North Shore this fall. And it's Shaq and Kobe Bryant. Like, oh my gosh. But that's insane. This is insane. Browns, man, woo, boy.
Here's my question for you, Chris.
What's up?
Who was taking Dylan Gabriel in the next 100 picks?
I don't know. That's
Who was
the thing.
why do you have to do this now? If you like him, okay, that's fine.
I thought he was a 6th round pick at best.
But who's taking him that you feel the need to go get him right now?
I don't understand it. I just don't. I mean, I think that he's the kind of guy you could have got. All right, so the Texans, have they picked yet? Or the Texans are on the board right now?
The Texans just picked Jalen Smith, the cornerback from USC.
Okay, so here we go again.
Here we go. Yeah, the Raiders picks right here.
I got it up on the screen, so we'll see. But the Raiders have 2 picks. If they don't use one of these 2 picks on Shedeur Sanders, then somebody really needs to check in on Mel Kiper and figure out what, because it's going to be that's it. There's only 5 more picks and it's done.
As we're waiting this out, I guess as we wait to see what the Raiders do, and we can interrupt if we must, or if they don't do anything interesting.
Here's my thing. They're on the clock for 30 more seconds. Could they actually be considering taking someone else?
I guess. I'm going to start the pivot to day 3 conversation for the Steelers. If we need to interrupt it, we will do so. But we're very late in the third here.
Yeah, it's almost over.
What are you guys looking at in terms of what you're going into day 3 with available for the Steelers? I'll start with you, Paul.
I believe they're going to draft a quarterback at some point. I mean, so, if you take the kid from Syracuse, the kid from Ohio State, Chris, who are some of the other guys?
Do you take Shedeur Sanders?
I think he's going to go right here. He's got to. But my point is, there's the kid from Ohio State, the kid from Syracuse. Isn't there one of these North Dakota State guys or Montana guys or one of those guys from that FCS that everyone seems to be high on? They're going to take one of those guys. And I also think they're going to have to take a cornerback too. I think that's probably the other position that we'll see tomorrow. So, is it going to be Will Howard? Is that his name? Cal McCord, one of those guys? Or is it going to be a corner? Those are 2 positions they're going to get. And after that, I would say the other 2 picks are probably luxury picks, right?
Or just, I think it's the few places in this draft, Paul, that you can say, where do we take our dart throws or where do we find a guy like Corey Trice, who they had a much higher grade on, who had some injury concerns. Maybe someone falls. Someone brought up
they could still double dip at defensive tackle.
I was about to bring that up. Daniel in the chat said Pickens is still there as a name of a guy they brought in. Maybe they want to go with that as a guy, because
what's happening?
There's some questions about his. He had some questions around him as like a potentially high upside guy, but doesn't necessarily have the motor. But the further we get into the draft, the less of a risk you're taking getting a guy like that. And considering the lower upside guys they've taken, to Marvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, I think Pickens would be a great pick if you can get him in round 4.
I love Aeneas Peebles. That's my guy. Virginia Tech.
Well,
nasty pass rusher.
Tom Brady is tight with Deion Sanders.
Yep.
And Tom Brady is part owner of the Raiders now.
Very true.
I'm just telling you, if it doesn't happen here, somebody better put out. I'm just saying, if the Raiders don't take them, I have no idea what happens next, because all the teams that needed a quarterback have already taken him.
Yeah, and is Sanders now on Kuiper's best available?
I'm sure he
now
is.
at number 1 overall.
He's been at number 1 overall. I feel
been there?
I feel like we should call up Doran Dickerson, who was number 1 best available for like a day and a half for Mel Kiper at one point in his draft.
Then Jalen Royals is next, a name that we've been talking about as a potential day 3 pick for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Jalen Lane, Ty Felton, Joshua Farmer, an interesting prospect from a Steelers perspective. Cam Scatterbu has been high on the available running backs for much of the night.
All right, here we go.
Here's the first Raiders pick. Oh, man. Just give us the pick.
Shut up and give us the pick, please.
Yeah, jeez.
It's
Who is this guy? Who is this guy?
I don't even know. He's a sideline reporter.
Yeah, okay, good. No one's here to see you, okay? And it's late. We're all trying to go home. This guy here wants to give a speech.
All those people are freezing in Green Bay.
None of the people online have tweeted the pick yet.
And I feel like you'd know, right? I mean,
if Shedeur was picked by now, I think that we would know.
His agent would be begging people to tweet it out.
Yes.
Kaleb Rogers. What? Paul, this is not looking good. This is not looking good for Shedeur, man.
Listen, it's going to be this next pick. It has to be. It has to be.
Do you think they're just messing with us and going with this guy first, the guard?
Paul, you remember the Looney Tunes episode where like Bugs Bunny was tricking Yosemite Sam? And he's like, you cross this line and this one and this one. And that's how I feel about this Shedeur Sanders pick. It's just like, he's gonna get picked here and then here and then here, and then we're gonna get to like the 5th round, and they're gonna be like, okay, finally, we'll do it now. But
or those Charlie Brown, where was it? What's the name? Lucy that keeps pulling the football where he's trying to kick a field goal. That's what's happening here. I mean, the Sanders. Someone needs to check in on the Sanders family to make sure there's a wellness check. I mean, because if he doesn't get picked here, he's going to be waiting till tomorrow. You know what I mean?
He's going to go top 5, man. He said he's going to go top 5. He
Right.
might not make the 5th round.
Right, and if he doesn't get picked here, the next 3 teams aren't taking him. I mean, the 49ers aren't taking a quarterback, the Eagles aren't taking a quarterback, and the Vikings aren't taking a quarterback. So let's go to day 3. The Titans already have their guy. Jacksonville doesn't take. New York took a guy. The Patriots, Jacksonville, the Raiders, they could get him at 108.
Is he going to give another speech? Oh, that's
No, not
Steve
this
Wisniewski.
guy, please.
It's Steve Wisniewski. He's not just a sideline reporter. He's a player.
Okay,
Wait,
he's
that's
getting into it this
Wisniewski?
time. That is Wisniewski. He's getting right into it this time. So, Charles Grant, tackle from
you go,
William and Mary College. No Shedeur.
So Mike Tomlin college there, baby. But Shedeur Sanders is
William
falling
and Mary.
to
Wait,
third
they took a tackle from William and Mary rather than taking Shedeur Sanders. I mean,
this is one of the most precipitous draft falls I think we've ever seen. We talk about Will Levis like he fell off a cliff. He got picked, what was that, late day 1 or early day 2? We were talking about, is Shedeur Sanders going to refuse to go to teams in the top 5 because he wants to go somewhere else? That was discourse that happened, not like a year ago. It happened like 3 months ago. Am I crazy?
Here's the thing. The next team that would be on the board that might take him is the Raiders again at like 108 or 109 or whenever they pick in the 4th round.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they decided, hey, this guy might get picked, this William and Mary guy. We can wait to, I can't believe someone's not going to trade in ahead of them and try and get him like early in the 4th round. I think at that point you get the value. But listen, I'll give you a story about a green room. So I used to work at the NBA, as you know, and the year that Rashard Lewis came out of high school, if you remember, guys that came out of high school back then, there wasn't the one and done stuff. In the NBA, your first round picks all have guaranteed money. Your second round picks, you got to sign, and it's not guaranteed and all that other stuff. So Houston had 3 picks in the first round, like 15, 17, and 20, say. Okay? And they told Rod Thorne, hey, listen, we're going to take Rashard Lewis with one of those 3 picks. So we're at the draft. Rashard Lewis is there. I'm in the green room. We're all, trying to, and of course, Houston takes their first guy. It's not Rashard Lewis. Houston takes their second guy. It's not Rashard Lewis. Now the cameras are on Rashard Lewis because he's the last guy sitting in the green room. And Houston doesn't take him with their 3rd pick, right? In fact, they took Mirsad Turkon, to which everybody said, what the hell are you doing? But anyway, that's a different story for a different day. He slid all the way to the 2nd round, which means he didn't get guaranteed money. Now, everybody knew whoever was going to sign him was going to, give him some money or whatever, but he wasn't going to get that first round guaranteed money. Now he's crying in the green room, because he's a 17, 18-year-old kid, And guess who was called, hey, you got to go get him. When he finally got picked by Seattle, it's like, hey, you got to go tell them it's time to go. So I'm like, yeah, you could give me the job. I got to go talk to the kid that's crying, and his parents and his mother's there, and she's, But the good news about that story is Rashard Lewis probably made, what, 80, 90, $100 million in his career and was a pretty good player. But it's a long night in that green room.
Adam, have you seen the story about Shedeur Sanders now?
No, I have not.
So apparently he got a phone call that looked like from a number from an NFL GM or NFL coach.
Yeah, that's not cool.
And it was a prank call, and the person said, he said, how are you? He said, good, but I'm waiting on you, man, because he thought it was one of those people. And he said, well, you got to wait a little bit longer, and the person hung up. And it was a prank call from just someone online, and Sanders Camp fell for it, and it was and they streamed it, so everyone saw it. That's not nice. Like however you feel about Shedeur Sanders, man, I'm laughing because of all the people that told me that I was stupid. That because I said that he wasn't going to get picked in the first round. I'm not laughing at Shedeur Sanders. I think that he can be a good player in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think that he should have been picked by now. I thought the Steelers could have reasonably picked him at 83, but that does not mean that people should be able to just come in and just clown, make fun of this kid and make his life, you do things to make him feel terrible. That's not what this is about, and I think that's where people take this way too far.
Honestly, if I was Deion Sanders, do you know what I would do at this point? I would tell every team, do not draft my son. He'll be an undrafted free agent after the draft, and we're going to sign with the team. We're going to sign with a team we want to sign with. Because the bottom line is, Deion doesn't need money. They don't need money. You know what I'm saying? They don't. And at this point, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but a 4th round signing bonus is what, 50 grand maybe, 75 grand, something like that. They don't need that money. It's like chump change for them. So to me, if I'm Deion Sanders, I call every team. I have the agent. I call every team and say, do not. If you select him, he will not report, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to have to cut him, and then we're going to sign with whoever we want to sign with. Because the bottom line is, he would be the #1 free agent, undrafted free agent on the market. He would get a pretty decent signing bonus, and they could control where they want to go.
I think that's an important distinction to make that we're making between, who are you dunking on here? To me, it is much more the mock draft industry that consistently blows it on quarterbacks. Year after year, what are the guys that we talk about going high that don't? We've been talking about that 2022 draft where the Steelers ended up getting Kenny Pickett. And
Right.
they were so wrong about so many guys in that class, and they were all so sure that the Steelers were going that direction at number 21 in this draft. To me, that's where the egg on the face is, more than Shedeur Sanders, more than his father. It's people that like I was just saying, we were talking about him picking the teams in the top 5 that he wanted to go to, having that level of clout, and like there's some guys in this industry that are really good at this stuff. At every other position, I think they get it mostly right, Paul. But when it comes to quarterbacks, they have an ability to just put on blinders and just start mocking each quarterback to the team that needs a quarterback, and doing so uncritically.
Well, I think part of it is it's such a quarterback-starved league. Everybody wants to have, quarterbacks that are good, and everybody wants to believe these guys are good. But let's go back to that Kenny Pickett draft, right? I would say the 32 general managers who actually get paid based on their teams winning and picking guys, right? They're probably all right. I mean, are any of those guys any good? Well, the only one that's any good is Brock Purdy, and he was Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, Pickett has been what he's been. Matt Corral is, I don't even know if he's still in the league. Malik Willis has been sort of, just a guy that is kind of an interesting, goal line player every so often. Penix, I guess he's a starter in Atlanta. We'll see what happens with him. Or not Penix, the kid from Cincinnati. Help me out here. Desmond Ritter. I mean, he's starting in Atlanta, right? I think he's Atlanta starting, but
he's now the backup because they drafted Michael Penix.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. All those guys that were passed on, and we were told, oh well, these, they're going to make people pay. None of them have made anybody pay.
Right. And that's the thing is that, that's why you don't reach for in a bad quarterback class, and that's what the Steelers did with Kenny Pickett. They paid the price, and now they're trying to rectify that by building over these next few years. And I think what my message was throughout all this was don't overdraft these guys. When I evaluated these guys, even again, I saw Shedeur Sanders as my 44th best player on the board. So according to my big board, he should have been picked by now. But at the same time, that did not mean that you should have picked him in the first round. And clearly, you'd have been stupid if you did, because he's still sitting there and we're about to be in the 4th round. So I'm with you, Paul. People need to understand that the people who make it personal, they're losers. I can't stand those people. But the NFL teams are looking at this situation and they're saying, hey, we're not overdrafting guys. Now, granted, I think the Browns actually just really did overdraft Dylan Gabriel. I did not see him as a 4th round pick even this year. But I think when you're looking at this class, people are being very cautious because this is not the year. And again, we've known this was not going to be the year. When the Steelers signed Russell Wilson and Justin Fields last year, they were everyone was okay, these are the quarterbacks that are going to get us through 2025, because the 2025 draft class, it doesn't look good for the quarterback position. That was when they thought Carson Beck was still going to be part of this class. So 2026 will come around, and that's the year where I think that there'll be some better options there, and people are waiting for that. But I think everyone's feeling like that. Look at the Browns. The Browns have Kenny Pickett and now Dylan Gabriel as their options at quarterback with an injured Deshaun Watson and Joe Flacco.
Right.
Is that exciting? Is that changing anything? No, it's not. Because they know this is not the year to reach, and I think everyone knows this is not the year to reach. So why reach? And I think that's what's happened so far.
I got Ty Felton, the wide receiver from Maryland, goes in the
Deep
last pick of the night, I believe.
Yeah.
To the Minnesota Vikings. Paul, so this will be my last formal question, because before we get to closing thoughts, but I am duty bound. I think I know what the answer is going to be. You think you alluded to it by saying Dion should be calling teams and saying, don't draft my son. But the Steelers have a 4th round pick, 21 picks in tomorrow. There aren't teams that are looking at quarterbacks. Are we going to be having this conversation about Shedeur Sanders in the 4th round? Should we be having the conversation with Shedeur Sanders in the 4th round? I'll start with you, Paul, and then go to Chris.
You know what? I don't think it would take a whole lot to move up. You know what I mean? And where you really have to move up is probably 10 spots, 12 spots, and you might be able to take them, if you really like them. But the same token, you could have just taken them in the 3rd round and saved your picks that you would have to give up to trade up for him. So I don't feel like they're going to do that. Honestly, I think if they wanted to pick Shedeur Sanders, they would have picked him at 83. But if he's still there, 5-6 picks before they pick, maybe they slide up and go grab him. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to think about it now, because I assumed he'd be off the board.
Just wait. If people aren't taking him, clearly there's a reason. So you know what? I'm gonna just wait, because I'm gonna just sit there at my natural 123rd pick, and if he's there, great. If not, oh well, we missed on the guy that no one really wanted to take in the first place. We'll go get one of these other players that we think is valued there. So I don't think the Steelers need to trade up. Stick at home, unless there's someone else you think is really talented that you really want to get. I think they are fine where they're at right now.
It is amazing, though.
Final
Five quarterbacks off the board in the first 3 rounds, and none of them named Shedeur Sanders.
I lost you there, Paul. I lost your audio for a second.
I said 5 quarterbacks off the board, and none of them named Shedeur Sanders.
I never saw that coming.
Yeah,
I thought at most 3. I thought at most was 3. That was it.
This is almost a historic drop for Shedeur. Let's wrap it up on this, though. I mean, the Steelers do end up taking Kaleb Johnson with about an hour or so to digest it, guys. I've seen more Le'Veon Bell comparisons in the chat, Chris. So let me phrase it to you this way: on the Naji Harris to Le'Veon Bell continuum, where do you put Kaleb Johnson if those are the 2 points of comparison?
More Le'Veon Bell, because I think that Naji Harris again was a see-hole, hit-hole guy. Le'Veon Bell was a guy that would stutter step and kind of wait for holes to develop and then attack. And I think that's what Kaleb Johnson did a lot at Iowa. I think that's why this is really a Steelers fit. That's what they were hoping Naji Harris could develop into with the Steelers. But granted, again, Le'Veon Bell got to do that because he had one of the best offensive lines in football available to him. He had an all-pro center in Marquise Pouncey, an all-pro guard in David DeCastro, really good tackles like Marcus Gilbert and Alejandro Villanueva, and Ramon Foster was there. That offensive line is like several times better than anything that Naji Harris has had in his 4 years with the Steelers. Kaleb Johnson, though, will get a chance to work with a more developed Zach Frazier, a more developed Mason McCormick, Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu being healthy, you hope, and then Isaac Sam. Like, this could be a much better offensive line this year than what we've seen for the Steelers in maybe the past 7 seasons. And I mean like 7 seasons, because it's been that long since I think that Pouncey and DeCastro were on their A game. So I think that's what you're looking at. If you can get that going with your offensive line, if you can get that run game going, that will be that could be a difference maker for you as a whole team, and that could be what allows Kaleb Johnson to be that quick cut, get in the hole type of guy.
Paul, final thoughts on Kaleb Johnson or anything else?
Well, I mean, I think that honestly, we knew there was 4 positions the Steelers needed, and running back was one of them. They've got Jaylen Warren, so this will be a nice guy to complement him in the backfield. I think that when you look at where he was valued and where people had him, they got value with him because, he was probably considered like a top 50 player, and they got him at 83. I don't have a problem with it. I think, I've liked what they've done in the first 3 rounds, getting, 2 positions of need, 2 guys that seem like they're going to be sort of plug and play and ready to go. 2 guys who I think are going to be a part of their team for a number of years. So it's not sexy. It's not, what people want. Everyone talks in the draft. They want, bigger names and all the other stuff. But to me, these are 2 like meat and potatoes picks that made the Steelers probably better this year and beyond, which is what you're asking for in the draft.
Well, gentlemen, we're at the end of another year of live streams here at Mike's Beer Bar. I want to thank them immensely for having us in here.
Great hosts.
Great place to hang out. There was a nice crowd in here tonight, Chris. People getting their steaks on the stone. Every beer you could ask for is here. So if you love the craft beer, if you haven't checked out Mike's Beer Bar in the North Shore across from PNC Park, please do. So big ups to Mike's Beer Bar. I also want to thank all of our guests tonight. Paul, Chris, you're here with us here at the end. Brian Batko, Ray Fittipaldo were here with us earlier remotely. Jason Mackey was in and out juggling Pirates responsibilities, but he was here for most of these 2 nights, so many thanks to him. Chris Dell, our sports editor, has been on the 1s and 2s all night behind the scenes. Andrew Rush has been managing our audio visual, so big thanks to those guys. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate everyone who joined us.
Absolutely.
If you've just discovered it, we're at kind of our peak audience for the night right now as we're signing off. If you're just joining us for the first time because of the NFL draft, you can get us 7 days a week on your YouTube channels. Join the Post-Gazette Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And we'll talk to you all again soon. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Chris.
All right, we'll do it again on Monday. Bye-bye.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.